So I'd like to call the meeting to order and have everyone at the table introduce themselves. We'll start over here with Tommy Lee.
Tommy Lee is filling up his water bottle, but he is the senior rep for the board. And I'm Tia Hunt. I'm the junior rep for the board.
Kathy Cannon, business manager.
Lorraine Childers, Addison rep.
Chris Cousineau, Vergennes.
I'm Kurt Haggis from Ferrisburg.
Neil Cameron, Vergennes.
Tom O'Brien, superintendent.
Lori Martin, administrative assistant to the superintendent.
Stephanie Taylor, co-principal.
Ed Weather, co-principal.
So before we move into the agenda, I had heard some interest in adding anything to the agenda or deleting it. The first thing that was taken off the agenda tonight was the 7B2 acceptable use policy first read tonight. Any other additions?
I have an addition, Kurt.
Okay.
Does this need to come in the form of a motion?
No.
Okay. So I'd like to add the discussion of establishing a finance committee and what I'm calling a 21st century education committee. Okay.
Do you have any preference where that would fit?
Well,
What's that? Yeah. So under discussion items, maybe?
Sure.
Okay.
Additionally, I intend to make a motion to amend the previously approved FY15 budget at some point.
Okay, that would be probably a good place for that would be 7D.
Okay.
7D.0.
Dot zero, yeah, right before
Yep.
one.
For finance and 21st century. Okay. Anything else?
So we will, under 7A3, we will not be awarding the construction contract tonight.
Okay. So it's off.
And under 7A2, we do not have the proper motion for me to get the loan documents, so that will be a approval to borrow the funds.
May I ask a clarifying
Yes.
question? Maybe
Yep.
we could wait till we get there.
Right, but he was looking for amendments to, fine.
Yeah, okay, I'll wait till we get
No,
there. That's fine, thank you.
Just waiting for the people that, are you guys going to sit down or are you just going to? All right. So first on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We held a regular meeting on March 10th.
Move to approve those.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor to approve the regular meeting minutes of March 10th, and it's been seconded. Is there any other discussion? Not hearing any. I'd like to ask all those in favor of approving the regular meeting of March 10th, signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? We also have the approval of a special meeting of March 24th. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
And we have a motion on the floor for approval of the minutes of a special meeting on March 24th. And a second. Is there any further discussion? Not hearing any, then I would like to call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? And then lastly, we have a special meeting on March 31st, 2014. Looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve the special meeting minutes of March 31st, 2014. Is there any additional or further discussion? Not hearing any, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. So, it's good to see a lot of public here. We are now coming to the part of the agenda where the public can make comments. I would like those of you in the audience to remember that we're asking for you to make comments. We'll if we can answer questions, we will. If we can't, then we'd appreciate it, if you'd wait until another time for the answer. But we'll try to answer any questions there are, but we're going to look at comments right now, and with each agenda item, we'll ask for discussion there. So, hi, Tim.
Good afternoon. Or evening. I wondered if the board would share with the public the results of the parliamentary inquiry we had at the last meeting regarding quorum and vote, so that we know, since you only have 4 of you here tonight, and I don't know if the students have a vote or not, but if you could just reveal to us what you found out from your legal counsel.
Okay, actually, I didn't go to legal counsel, but I just read the law, and the law basically states that a majority of the members of the board shall constitute a quorum. So in our case, the members of the board number 7, and a majority would be 4. Subject to the provisions of subsection C. And do you want me to discuss that, or?
Sure.
Okay, the provision of subsection C allows a union district board to apply additional voting value to each member. In our case, we don't have that. That hasn't been done with this union district board. So in that case, subsection C doesn't apply. But the concurrence of a majority of members present at a union school district board meeting shall be necessary and sufficient for board action.
Thank you. That was important to put your footage tonight on whatever you're going to vote on. It's important to know.
Yeah.
We checked it out the next morning, actually.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Maybe later.
Okay. Hi, Carol.
Okay, I have one in connection with that. So the law mandates 30 days that a seat must be filled. And so I was just wondering why it's Vergennes and Panton, right?
Ferrisburg and Panton.
Doesn't have a representative yet?
Yep, Ferrisburg did appoint one Thursday, George Gardner, but he is ill tonight. And Panton is still deliberating. I heard today that there are upwards of 5 people interested, and they were going to meet next week.
Thanks.
All right? Any other comments? Okay.
Oh, I was going to wait for someone else.
Yes, Carol.
Okay.
Jay had something.
Who did?
Jay.
Okay.
Did you, Jay?
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Will we, I think Lori made another motion for the 7D further down, so we'll obviously have an opportunity to talk about budget stuff at that point.
Yeah.
Not worried about doing that now.
Yeah, what I said earlier, Jay, was that the comment section, or the public comment section, is for making comments, and whatever answers we can give at that time, we'll certainly give them. But that, each section of the agenda you can discuss, what's on that section. Go ahead, Carol.
Thanks. So there's no law that requires time constraints on budget revisions. Therefore, I'm imploring the board to temporarily take their focus off the FY15 budget and focus on internal control of the VUHS finances for the following reasons. The FY13 audit is not completed. I would like to present an expert record that does not support special education as the cause of FY13 $1 million deficit, which is the Department of Education, and I have the record here. From FY8 to FY13, special education grew for the local obligation. I did a number here. I think it was like 200. It was under, yeah, it was 267,971. So and that was FY8 through FY13. The annual budget records also support that the 38.1% special education costs were due to poor projection by our administration. Number 2, auditors need to be part of an open session. For example, we've been told for years that auditors are not plentiful in Vermont. Yet in an article, the Burlington, we all know they're having school deficit problems. Quote unquote, a New Hampshire auditing firm outlined the district's financial troubles. So I guess we can go outside of Vermont. The auditors have a request within, I won't read it, but they have a request that say if you want any further, information from us, that they're willing to come to a meeting. Also, one thing that hasn't been discussed, I'd like to see FY12 an agenda item, especially the fraud risk assessment. The school currently assesses its risk of loss due to fraud on an informal basis, and it goes on. And it says that the management develop a fraud risk management program that is appropriate for the size and complexity of the school. I would like to see that be a focus. Number 3, a clear explanation to the path of $1,653,096 fund balance surpluses from 7 to 12 carried forward as revenue in school budgets as required by law. The expert of that pathway that I'd like to present you is the Addison Central Supervisory Union. They also had a surplus fund balance for FY13. And if you go to their annual report, I would love for our taxpayers to receive something like that. They have what they call a fund balance report. June 11th, their fund balance, June 2011, their fund balance was a little over $200,000. If you go to the prior page, that $200,000 is proposed in the FY13 budget. Then if you go to the annual, the most recent, that's proposed FY13 budget, the FY13 has the same exact 201,316. So these guys are experts. They get their audits on time. Their schools have never, gone over the threshold. Their audits are available online. And so I wanna, it's been difficult because we need some expert opinion within our meetings. And last, number 4, the Department of Education is currently reviewing fund balance surpluses in the VUHS audits and budgets. This review needs to be completed, released, and discussed in a VUH open session before taxpayers are asked to approve any more funds. The taxpayers deserve clear explanations that are recorded in the board minutes and supported by audit and budget reports before being asked to support another budget. It would also be in the best interest of taxpayer and education for this board to sanction a true public committee to study fund balances and bring their opinion before the board next month. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Can I give you guys these?
Pardon me?
Can I get these?
Sure. Let's give it to Glory. Anyone else? Okay, move on to board communication. Anything from the board?
I'll just say I've received a lot of correspondence over the past few days. We'll talk about it later.
Okay. Chris or Lori? Okay. All right, educational presentation? Oh.
Maybe. It was up here. It was my helper.
Timed
It's
out.
missing now, so.
Just
She's about this big.
There we go.
Just there we go. So my name is Beth Adrian, and I'm a special educator here at the high school. But I'm really here today to talk about a personalized learning grant that we just received from the Agency of Education and the implications for that for the future here at VUHS.
Christine Kirkaldy, Spanish teacher and PBGR facilitator.
And a member of my grant team. So we talked about that. Okay, so where we were. And I picked this picture on purpose of talking about where we were so that we can talk about where we're going. And you notice that all those chairs are in rows, and there's lots of them in that classroom. And I wanted to talk about that because really where we were is we had content teachers, which we still have content teachers, but I think we're more than that now. We were based in the Carnegie unit, which we still sort of are, but we're really looking at how to open that up for students, and we'll talk about that in a little while. And that our requirements were rigid, without choice, and with limited choice for students, and our assessments were final exams.
So over the past 8 years, what we've been doing is to open that direction and to bring personalized learning within the hallways of BUHS. We have our nationally recognized Walden program, which serves a subset of our students. And what we were trying to do is to bring, through the PBGRs, performance-based graduation requirements, personalized learning to the rest of our student population. It's been a long 8 years, several grants later, but we do have a set of performance-based graduation requirements that coexist with the Carnegie units. And we have 2 classes currently graduating under those performance-based graduation requirements, class of 2016 and the class of 2017.
And in addition to that, our middle school also has a final capstone project for 8th graders where they use that as a way to show high school teachers and community members and other faculty members that those students are ready to step up and be high school students. And so that's like a gateway, non-formal traditional assessment that students have that shows how that we're creating learners and not just, we just don't have students in this building. We have learners.
We have learners. And one of the pieces and one of the reasons and the rationales behind this is that the student has to take ownership of that learning, that they have to show what they know. Learning based on seat time and a letter grade inserted into a report card does not in the least prove that a student knows the material that was covered in that course. By developing the performance-based graduation requirements, the kids have to perform, they have to reflect on what they're learning, excuse me, and they have to demonstrate that learning in a very public way and in maintaining their electronic portfolio.
And along with the work that students are doing, or our learners, we have developed grade level teams. We have to, so that we have almost an elementary school model in a high school where students keep the same morning meeting advisor for 4 years and build those relationships. And those are some of the teachers who know those students best, even if they may never have that student in their class, their core classes that they teach. And then we also have callback time where students can go to teachers that they either have for a class or to another teacher who they trust and can have those conversations about their education and what is happening in their lives.
One of the newer pieces for the callback system is now we have built-in enrichment for our students so that it's not just about remediation, but it's about serving all of the students, no matter where they are, so that enrichment is now becoming a piece of our callback system.
Right. We have, at this point, we have been able to offer an intro to college studies through CCV during our callback time for some of our sophomores and juniors, and we have 14 students involved in that right now. It's pretty impressive what those students are doing with that time. That's a little different. So current state legislation, new state requirements that demand that we talk about some of these changes that are happening in education. The school quality standards were just adopted, the new school quality standards. I think like in the last 2 weeks or so, actually, they're that new. And they actually, I've read through parts of them and that kind of fit in with this personalized learning and with what we're doing with PBGRs and the high school pieces. And we are leaps and bounds ahead of where most high schools in the state need to be based on the school quality standards. And then Act 77, and that's the flexible pathways legislation that was adopted last year. And that is where the personalized learning plans come in. And so it's like how to meet each kid or each student or learner where they are now and how to make sure they can reach the goals that they set for themselves. And so this is a Wordle. So, and these are all the words that are in our performance-based graduation requirements. So when you see some of the ones that pop out are, you know, the big pieces of what we want students to have as part of their education here. Variety, understanding that they're learners.
I literally did take the performance-based, word for word, performance-based graduation requirements, and that you go, Wordle.net, you can play with it too. And I pasted our performance-based graduation requirement statements, the I statements, which I'm sure you have multiple copies of those because I presented a number of times. And this is what came out to show the different pieces.
And really to me what PBGRs really mean is that it takes, like I'm a special educator, so my job's a little bit different anyway, but you know, it really means that like even our content teachers, they're not just content teachers anymore. They're coaches, they're cheerleaders, they're advisors. We guide students, we listen to them, and we encourage them, we challenge them to move in directions that they might not have thought about, and then we get to present our content. We're not teaching students anymore, we're educating learners and trying to make 21st century citizens.
Right, and again, that piece of educating for the job that doesn't exist yet, and that's what this is about the skills of, you know, understanding of communication, critical thinking skills, all of the pieces that aren't, some of these are kind of squishy, and it's hard to assign a grade to them. But if you get a performance-based assessment, if you get something that the student can prove that they can communicate well and work well with a team, can also autonomously learn and then bring back from their own learning, bring pieces to their schooling, that's what this is all about.
So what that might look like, so it used to be students take courses and they pass or fail them. And what that really means for now, and what our legislation and our school quality standards say, is that students design their own learning experiences and work until they meet those standards. So that, so for then, if we're looking at this slide, the requirements are the same for all students with some elective courses. And then the new flexible pathways is that really that requirements are scaffolded to ensure individual students are successful in multiple pathways. So what Christine chooses and I choose to do to maybe get a, social studies credit or meet one of the PBGRs might look totally different, but in the end, we are held to the same standard. So how we go about that could be different. And that's where, as educators, we need to be broader in what we do with our students so that we can help them meet those standards, even if it is a writing project. I do a lot of co-teaching in math, so that's one of my area of challenges. So, so even if I'm supporting students with writing, it's a little bit out of my comfort zone as well, but I know that as an educator, I can support that student no matter what and help them reach their goals. And then, so students generally spend 13 years in school. Moving through the grades is pretty linear. You finish first grade, you finish second grade, you meet the credit requirements to go into 9th grade to 10th grade. So really, we're looking at learning as the constant and time as the variable. And I've presented before to the board about our summer program and how that is really what we're looking at, is that as time being the variable and learning being the constant, and holding those high standards for all kids.
For all kids. And then I think one of the pieces that we, especially with the middle school using the capstone and some of the pieces and having that flexibility of having the SAIL program, the summer program, bridge the gap for some of these students. We also have been using a lot of transition, especially that shift from 8th grade up to 9th grade, and being able to support the students with that. We've got to be on the now side of that. We've got to be able to support these students in their learning. And it does lessen the likelihood of the social promotion of that kid who
just needs more time.
They're just so nice.
Right.
They shouldn't be separated from their peers. Let's just put them in 9th grade. They'll be fine.
We know
We're not
they're
doing
not
that anymore.
Right.
We're not doing that anymore.
So what does this mean for our practice every day in the classroom? So it's not really in the classroom anymore. The whole community becomes our classroom, and the learning doesn't necessarily take place during the 7 hours that students are in the building. It may be that student who has that sugaring operation outside of school during March, but what does that mean for that student those other 9 or 11 months of the year for that business that student is running? Or it may be the student who has an internship at an auto mechanic shop, or who works with a artisan furniture maker. It could be anything based on what that student's passion is. It's looking at students' passions and using those passions to promote their education. So why it matters? So we are members of the League of Innovative Schools, and so what they really say is strong schools are the best job creation program we have. It's important that we have some notes on that. So imagination, expertise, creativity, entrepreneurship, these are the assets that drive innovation and create new industries and produce the most sought after workers. Preparing every student for success will strengthen our economy and empower our communities. So strong schools are the foundation of our society. So democracy, opportunity, prosperity, equality, the values that have defined America, depend on an informed, engaged, well-educated citizen. To prepare the next generation of citizens and leaders, we need great schools for every student. And I think we're on our way there. Strong schools create strong communities. Schools are the cornerstone of our communities. We celebrate our students, cheer on our local teams, and welcome graduates into our workplaces, institutions, and families. To keep our communities vibrant, prosperous, and thriving, we need great schools.
And a lot of this, even though it has the word innovative in it, a lot of this is actually cycling backwards to John Dewey, who actually was a Vermonter, and about having students follow their passions. And you can teach them math skills and social studies skills and science skills while allowing them to study something that is relevant and a passion for them.
So through our grant, the Personalized Learning Plan grant, we know that students in grades 9 and 7 next fall, or not, in the fall of 2015, all have to have, they're the first group of students that have to have personalized learning plans. So what does that mean? It means support in pursuing additional funds, whether it be through the school budget or grant opportunities for educators to have professional development and coaching on writing and in working with learners on developing those personalized learning plans, because just going through the motions doesn't give, that there's no meaning in that for the students, and those plans really need to have meaning for students. And then draft and adopt a board policy regarding personalized learning plans, and really in the context of our performance-based graduation requirements, we already have those. The first one is purposely written to include that personalized learning, and students know how they learn and what their modalities are and the best ways for them to get the information that we present to them. Any questions? Lori?
So, all through this, I'm thinking, college.
Yes.
How do you communicate? I mean, right now you send transcripts. How are you going to communicate to colleges so that they can understand what it is?
So colleges.
Can we hear the question?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I was asking about college in particular. How does this type of learning communicate to colleges so that colleges can make a decision of whether they're going to have, accept the student or not? Right now, they get transcripts along with SATs.
And many cases, portfolios.
Really?
E-portfolios are, yes. And matter of fact, many of the elite schools, the Middleburys, et cetera, that's what they're looking out for now. In order to differentiate yourself from the kid who has a transcript and some SAT scores. Also, I wish I had thought of that, but we could have pulled up a link for you. As members of the League of Innovative Schools and as members of the New England Secondary School Consortium, there is a very long list, and I would be happy to email it to all of you, of colleges, state colleges mostly, who have signed on to performance-based or proficiency-based learning, and who are open and looking for students who are willing to do that, to show that.
They really like to see students who have shown that they've met standards, and either through a standards-based report card, which some high schools are moving towards, or a proficiency-based portfolio. So they really like to see, oh, this student just didn't get an A in 12th grade English. They actually know how to write.
There's samples of, right. It's like their greatest hits, and they get to show it.
Okay, thank you.
Ed?
Maybe perhaps you and Christine can emphasize why it is that we want the board to adopt a high leverage educational policy. And it stems all the way back to that's the bias of the New England Secondary School Consortium. Could you explain why that's important?
So the Secondary School Consortium just received a pretty significant grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to support personalized learning, which we are hoping to apply for and receive. But as part of that, one of the required activities is board policy supporting personalized learning, and we asked about, well, we have a state legislation regarding personalized learning plans and flexible pathways. Why do we need a board policy also? And what they really said was, yes, they really want board policy because it shows the commitment of the community to personalized learning and flexible pathways to students, and that's why they really encourage that.
Is there a time frame for producing something like that?
I think it was
Last year?
August, no, I think the deadline for that is August 2015.
Thank you.
So is there some model language out there?
Yes. There is absolutely some model language. And there's also, as part of that grant, it's actually a little bit of a more aggressive timeline, but as part of that aggressive timeline on that grant, the coaching and the professional development steps up from the New England Secondary School Consortium. We would have a building coach here
Every day.
every week, starting
You're right.
next January.
If we were
If we were to
successful.
pursue
Right.
that and get that grant. So we actually, because we already have performance-based graduation requirements and some of the other initial steps that are needed in order to pursue that grant done, because we've already done all of that work, we are in pretty good shape to pursue that.
It's always ahead of the curve.
Right.
On a lot of the things that they're looking for and looking at.
So just a clarification, are you saying that the, that this grant, or the consortium of secondary
New England.
yeah.
thank you,
Secondary School Consortium.
will be supporting us by sending someone, literally
Yes,
sending
literally
someone?
sending someone.
Okay, thank you.
A live body.
A live
And
body.
coaching us.
Yes, yes.
They have, and again, because it's the New England area states, they have people in each state who they've cultivated to be ready to do this. And that's part of, and I think a benefit of our being members of the consortium, but also early members of the League of Innovative Schools.
And part of us pursuing that grant is to have board support for pursuing that via the board chair's signature on the letter of
The
intent.
letter of intent.
You got that right? Board chair signature letter.
Yep. I would
Hi.
suggest that be, the first objective of the 21st Century Education Committee that we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, there's one over here too. Hi.
I was wondering, if you have a non-traditional school day, so hours of supervising, I guess, or assisting students aren't the normal 8 to 3. And you have a student who is very passionate about what he's doing, so there's not a lot of feedback coming to you that there are problems. Let's say he or she is working in an internship with an auto mechanic. Everything's going fabulously. But yet, this is a student who struggles to communicate in the good written word. It just seems like it's going to be very difficult to match all of this up.
I would say that the internship probably wouldn't be for the whole day, so that that student can still get support within the confines of that school day. So maybe they go to school from 8 to 10, and then at 10, for some of that supports through either a PBGR class or help through the high school learning center in a special educator if they were an IEP student, and then after that they would go out to that internship, and that would be part of that handshake with wherever the internship was. That's one of the things that through that coach next spring, that one of those detailing things that we definitely have to work out how that those details of each individual student's plan.
And that brings up, of course, transportation. There are some auto shops within town.
Right.
And perhaps that could be arranged, but that's a lot
Well, and that's
of...
right, and I would hope that that's the other thing that the coaching does, is help build those community relationships within the community for some of that.
And some of those relationships are already there.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah. But if you're thinking of an entire student body of 700 here now, 600, that's a lot of students to anticipate and plan for.
And I wouldn't think that all students necessarily go out and say, yeah, I want an internship here or there. Like, my guess would be that some kids might say, well, I can meet my PPGR in writing by taking writer's workshop with Mr. Thomas, one of our English teachers, and, you know, I can satisfy that requirement that way. And, you know, looking at the personal learning plan as a way to meet the performance-based graduation requirements, rather than looking at it as a way to earn Carnegie units.
So there'll be core classes?
Yes. There
Okay.
will still be classes offered.
Okay.
And if you think about VUHS as like the hub or the mothership, everybody comes here, some things happen here, some things don't, and then people may or may not go out. And not everyone will go out. There may be people who are, that's their mode. They are most comfortable and feel safest doing their learning within these walls. So it's not like blowing everything up. We're just blowing some things up.
Didn't get. And then a Wordle, how do you spell that?
W-word,
Yeah.
L-E.net, Wordle.net.
I was just gonna ask if they were still, I mean, the kids are still gonna be required to meet certain, I mean, they're gonna have required classes.
Eventually, like, the hope of the people that are working on the PPGR meta group, like which is, our PPGR meta group is the group of teacher leaders working to move that initiative forward. You know, hopefully the idea would be that students need to meet those PPGRs, and if they meet them through classes, that, you know, instead of a Carnegie unit they show they have evidence for their performance-based graduation requirement. Did I get that?
Okay. Peter?
You've talked about the League of Innovative Schools, and you've talked about the Coalition of Essential Schools, or Coalition of Secondary Schools. How does their work, how does that work with you folks? Is it a membership?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
And so how do you capitalize on the work that they do, and how does that impact what's going on in this building?
We have Christine and Matt DeLoy, who are both two of our teacher leaders in this building, often go to either the New England Secondary School Consortium network meetings, and those are at about like once a month.
Once every other month.
Once every other month, and then they have a conference in the spring. They have a pretty a really nice website where they have all their resources on it.
A lot of resources there.
Yeah. They're always a phone call away. They've done some webinars with us. We actually have a individual phone call tomorrow with them.
Right.
So working with them takes
Yes.
additional time than
Yes, absolutely.
from your teaching load.
Yes.
That kind of gets to the point I want to re-stress that you did, Beth, is that along with teaching these 21st century learners, we need to be 21st century teachers. Right. And there's a tremendous amount of understanding that needs to be with the board and the community and parents, that you may have 8 in your French 4 students, but as a French teacher, you are now impacting, influencing, instructing, coaching. I can't remember all the verbs you said, that 300 students in your day or week.
Yes.
So there is a lot of need to be aware that we are really a teaching faculty that is defined in our jobs so much more than it used to be.
More than what our license says.
And so with every teacher, faculty member here, and this is just kicking off, but already you may have one faculty member having so many roles with the 500 plus students we have here, that it is very necessary to keep defining that.
I agree. I think that it wouldn't surprise me if somewhere in the future that high school teachers become more generalists than we currently are, like elementary school teachers.
Yeah, you've been waiting for a while.
Sorry.
Okay. Most of my answers were out there. I was kind of interested in this meta group you're talking about, the overseeing group of individuals, teachers that are going to be watching this program. This is just kicking off. And my questions are, how are you measuring success of the program, and what kind of contingencies do you have if you don't meet those measurements? Because right now we're kind of thin with a lot of resource, and I think it's an awesome idea. I just wanted to understand, you're asking more of the staff, you're asking more of a lot of folks. How are you going to manage that?
So we've been lucky in that we've had some grant money to help support those people to do that work after school.
Right.
So going forward in the future, the idea would be to make sure that the systems, because we are slowly implementing it, starting with the class of 2016 and the class of 2017. So we are, and not like the class of 2016 only, there's 9 performance-based graduation requirements, and they only have to meet 4 of them. So we're slowly implementing that to see like where we might need some of those extra supports. And
Okay, so it's kind of a slow roll.
yeah,
Right.
so it's not
Well,
like all of a
because-
sudden,
right.
like, you know, yeah. And so, so it's, you know, back to that metaphor of building the plane in the air. So we're building frantically.
I'd like to add that also, we're also driven by agreement with the Agency of Education, among other things, to increase our college attendance rate, which we have consistently over the last 8 years, and to send more kids off ready for either work, 2-year schools, 1-year schools, internships, and that's going to be really one of the big metrics of whether or not we're hitting that this thing's working. If those numbers don't rise, then we will have to recalibrate. But so far, as we've instituted these things, all those numbers are on the increase. So.
I have a question that relates to money. So in the last 2 budget meetings, sorry, it's not doing that, there was a lot of conversation about PBGRs and the personalized learning plans and how to pay for that, especially in lieu of the proposed reductions in the spending on the budget. And I just wonder, how does that translate into what you're telling us all today?
So, so one of the proposals that came from the teachers at one of those meetings was like, give us a year to see what our needs are, and we'll come back with a proposal that will make everyone happy.
I just want to recognize
Yeah,
that
thank you.
what they're presenting to us is going to be difficult to achieve
Thank
in
you.
lieu of what we're
You're right.
facing.
And I'm trying not to
Budget conversation
get
we're
emotional about
eventually
that
going
right
to
now.
have.
So, let me ask a question.
Okay.
So we go through with these cuts, the budget gets warned and it gets passed. What effect is that gonna have on all this?
Huge. It's devastating. I don't even know.
Specifically.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it puts, so the PBGR meta group, gone. The PLPs, down to what the state requirement is, and we'll figure it out on our own next year. Because part of the reason that we do that we are able to support those PBGRs is that meta group. What else? I'm thinking, I think just the less staff to be able to work with the kids who need it, those ones that need that support. Or that encouragement, or that coaching, or that bump up, to be like, okay, you know, like, let's keep going, what's your year-long project, what's your capstone? You know, how can you use your capstone as maybe, and make your 8th grade capstone into a PBGR worthy piece of evidence? How can you improve on that? You know, so that's some of the work that we're looking at that would be in jeopardy.
Can you just real quick speak to why is the meta group gone?
Because I think our grant money would be gone with it.
Because we couldn't implement what we.
Two of the teachers who are proposed to be reduced are the heads of that.
And the grant
So-
money follows.
And the grant money
facilitator of
follows
Without
those
going
steps.
into the too much detail about that, there are not other people in the organization that might have an interest in picking that up?
I think it would be difficult knowing that the people that have been running it put their hearts and it's disheartening for the remainder of the faculty to keep that work going, knowing that the two people who put their hearts and souls into it have been reduced.
And there'd be no money to support them.
And there'd be no money to support them.
Also, the grant providers aren't gonna have a very good taste in their mouth as well.
No, they are not. Also, I fear, and I believe, that we will lose our membership and the New England Secondary School Consortium and the League of Innovative Schools, which then leads to losing more support. Because if we're not being innovative and we're not able to do the things that we've been doing and working towards for the past 8 years, they are not gonna look kindly on that.
But don't you think, I mean, there's a lot of schools in this boat right now. But-
Oh, yeah.
So when you think that there'd be a little bit more leniency in that area? I mean, I'm just wondering.
It definitely puts that PLP grant money, I
It's in
would
jeopardy,
take,
right?
Totally,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
That's, I would say, like, we don't stand a chance.
And I think the hard part of that is that we've been going to the conferences, they are aware of the work we're doing, and so we're not just looked to within Vermont, but within the region. Schools are looking to us for some of the things that we've been developing.
We just scheduled 3 more visits within the last week.
Right.
People coming to Vergennes to see how we do things.
We just presented there, Christine and Matt DeBloy and I and 2 students at the League of Innovative Schools Conference like a month ago. And we had so many schools who, the highest form of flattery is imitation. And like 4 schools were presenting on their version of our callback system after going and seeing us at a different
right.
time.
So we just don't cut the program.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
And so I guess, having given this a tremendous amount of thought and having the opportunity to hear from you here and now, I mean, I'm wondering how embedded the program is in our school when the idea that, the 2 leaders who have been pushing the program heretofore, I mean, if one of those folks unfortunately got hit by a bus, okay, just depersonalize it, and I realize this is very dicey, I'm sorry, but if that happens, I don't see why the League of Innovative Schools would rescind the school's best abilities, the school's attempt to give it a try, notwithstanding a reduced staffing level. I'm not sure I see why, but anyway.
So 2 things on that. The first is, I think if we, like our callback system, one of the reasons I think it works better now than it has in the past is that it's now part of the culture. And PBGRs, we're still implementing them. They're not they're not totally embedded in our culture yet. And so that's where we struggle. And having one of our PBGR leaders hit by a bus would be devastating, but at the same time, in honor of them, we would want to move forward. This just seems so much different than were one of them to get hit by a bus.
And I think one of the things that was said at a meeting today, one of the leadership meetings that we had today, was that teachers are looking at each other and taking that step back. So the whole 8 years worth, 10 years worth of leadership, cultivating leadership in teachers, that culture has taken a big blow, big psychological blow.
Do you think that's a short-term thing related to sort of the
I don't
organic
think so, not the way people were talking.
impact of the conversations?
So it's like sometimes in a nasty divorce, like one spouse is like, it would be better if the person just died rather than dealing with the nasty divorce. There's been a.
So,
Could I put a
let's
fine
just
point?
time check. So, 1 or 2 more comments.
I think somebody needs to explain
stuff.
I don't think we have a full understanding of the relationship between our standing Nellie Mae grant, which is from the same foundation as the grant we're applying for. Let's just say that Christine gets hit by a bus. We don't have access to the Nellie Mae grant money anymore. If she's reduced, for instance, her grant money goes with her. It's not in the school's name. She's the grant manager. And so if we're going after Gates grant, and Gates is the parent of Nellie Mae, we're certainly not going to get the Gates grant after we've already botched the Nellie Mae grant. So I just want to put a fine point on what they were talking about and make something specific a little bit more clear.
And have you examined this? Have you researched this specifically?
Yeah.
And you've got in writing that the organizations would not support this school if the
Oh, I just-
individuals were not available to do this work.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay. One more comment. There was someone in the second row. Okay.
And so, one thing I want to say is that this school runs by all of these different groups working together. You have PBGR, you have PBIS, you have, I can just, PLPs.
School that acronyms.
Who knows what
Part
they mean?
of this is the culture that we have created and what it, let me step back. Okay. We all work together to make these things work. And people have really stepped up to the plate to make these things work and gone beyond what is required as a teacher and have put a ton of time into these things. I know in my experience with the PBIS, people go down to this conference, which is paid by the state, but they give up a week of their summer, unpaid, to go do this conference. PBIS is Positive Behavior Intervention and Support. And basically, it is to deal with school climate. And this school has been a very safe school. And I think part of that culture is because of morning meetings and callbacks and the relationships that have been built in this school between teachers and students. I would hate to see that part, because morning meeting is a very, very important part of the relationship building process. And I would hate to see someone that has put that amount of time to make this a safe school not have anybody step up to the plate to take that piece of it over, because that will be affected as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So next is reports to the board. Who wants to go first? Or are you going to go together?
Okay.
All right.
I'm Tommy Lehoff. I wasn't here to introduce myself, but that's who I am. Spring sports are underway right now. Softball just won. They just won their game. Their scrimmage, rather, against CVU, I think. The fields are too wet for games to be played, really, so the lacrosse game tomorrow is kind of to be determined whether it's going to be at Mount Ave or here or at all. It's supposed to get really chilly. But, yeah, that's kind of what's going on with sports.
So this week the juniors are taking their SBAC tests, which is, I'm not sure exactly how to explain it, but kind of the kneecap replacement tests. The Germany trip is leaving next Monday for 2 weeks, or the German group, I guess. And 2 weekends ago, the band trip took a trip to NYC, which was a success, I've heard. And before we're done, I would also like everybody to recognize Tommy for being accepted to all of his schools, including Dartmouth.
A little called out there, huh?
I think that's all we have. Let's see if anyone wants to comment.
No, I think that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for the students? All right, principals.
I think Ed and I have a couple of little updates and catch you up items, and then as part of our report, we're going to go into some detail about the reductions that we found to make up. Sorry, we're going to do a few updates, and then as part of our report, after some sort of nuts and bolts items, we're going to talk about the reductions. So. Tia mentioned the SBACs. We did 7th grade first 2 weeks ago, then 8th grade last week. 2 weeks ago, we had a week's break, and 11th graders are testing SBACs now. On April 4th, the tally for nationwide SBAC, because states from all over the country were participating in this pilot test. There were 1,079,000 completed assessments done, and of those, 5,204 were Vermont assessments, and that was halfway through the second week of the window. So it's it's kind of a impressive endeavor. They've never had a single testing scenario like that ever. And we were talking about, Lori, you asked about how colleges will know. The SBACs will, because it's a nationwide test and it's the same standard, unlike the old AYP test that we took, the NECABs had a different bar than, say, another state. These will be nationwide and consistent. So colleges and other people who are in the business of evaluating students' proficiency can use those as a standard measure, both the PART test and the SBAC. So,
Is this Common Core, is this new test?
yes, it's based on it's the assessment side of the new, the standards in English, language arts, and math. And that's what the students were testing. This round is actually not evaluating students' proficiency, it's evaluating the test itself and rating the questions, determining, kind of working out the kinks. It'll go into effect in the spring of 2015 for real. So our district volunteered to do it because it gives our students a familiarity with the interface, the onlineness of it. It's very different than anything they've taken before, and also it allowed teachers to see the kinds of questions that students will be faced with and the kind of instructional changes that need to occur. In addition to implementing the standards, there's also techniques in taking the test. So.
Don't let Tia know that it doesn't count.
Tia, it counts. Try your hardest. And speaking of SBACs, the 8th grade is in capstone year 2 with significant revisions over last year, and most students are finishing their first draft of the paper portion of the thesis paper of that. So that's kind of exciting. It's moving along. I think they're about a week past their original timeline, and that was because of the SBAC assessments pushed them back a bit.
I have a question about the capstone. Is that something that's presented to the public?
There will be, yeah, to a certain degree, and we haven't really worked that out. Last year there were small group students presented to their like morning meeting and their small cohort, but community members were invited. And there's also a gallery walk portion of it where students will kind of talk about that, but we're taking one step at a time. That was sort of the model that they used last year, and we're looking at how best to present 71 performances and presentations.
I'm thinking of something else then, but I distinctly remember coming to see my 8th graders capstone presented amongst a whole bunch of other kids. Certainly Jim's daughter, Sophie was there, in here at night.
Not all of them were that way, I understand, but I wasn't here then, so I came to some of them. But
Somebody that was.
So that happened.
Mhm.
It was cool.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
I think that's awesome. I mean, Addison maybe still does personal learning projects for the 5th graders, and it was amazing to go in and watch what these kids had done. It was unbelievable.
And is there sort of smoother implementation this year? the kids maybe who were 7th grade last year watching those 8th graders move through it?
They've really upped the ante quite a bit with the type of paper it is and the research involved. So I think it's not an equivalent comparison because the project itself has been expanded and made a little bit more rigorous.
We worked a lot on thesis, the 8th graders this year, and they're fairly sophisticated to a kid, I think. My turn?
Yep.
I get good news stuff? All right, I can't announce the names because I just got this in the mail this afternoon, and I haven't talked to the kids yet. So, but we do have 2 National Merit Scholarship Program finalists, and one of each gender, and they're juniors. They'll be announced in the fall, and you're looking at the National Merit Scholar what was it, qualifier. So Tommy Lee was ours this year. So it's nice to have that kind of recognition on almost a yearly basis. For those of you who are glazing over when Steph was talking about the SBACs, that stands for Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. I was glazing over, you're right. And I want to say one of the interesting things about finding assessment metrics is that they sometimes pop out of nowhere and surprise you. And one happened just the other day, and guidance sent down the seniors in danger of failing lists, which are always terrifying to a senior high principal. And, you know, my first year here, they brought them down in a little red wagon. I mean, we had dozens and dozens, and we had 5. We had 5. And that as a metric is really remarkable for how well our teachers personalize instruction and how well our advising system is going and what a great job our guidance people do. So I just wanted to say that was a surprising metric that came out of nowhere, and I went, where's the rest of them? And they said, that's it. So the number is going to vary from now on. Believe me, we'll still be chasing kids down the hall, you know, with their graduation gowns. But, you know, at this point of the year to have that in effect is pretty remarkable. So that, alongside with our really high graduation rate, our really low special ed dropout rate, makes us a pretty special place. So. You sure?
Do you remember what the dropout rate, not the dropout, what the graduation rate was when you first came?
When I first came, it was, well, we had one year we dipped below 90, but it was in the low 90s. We've always been pretty strong. I didn't do a whole lot to make that better, but it's up to 97. So.
Thank you.
We ready?
Mm-hmm. So we were charged with coming up with reductions to equal approximately $316,000 and some change. We talked at that time about 2 tiers. The tier 1 totaled approximately about $210,000, and I said at that time that those we thought those reductions could be made based on the enrollments and having run the schedule, and so that we were because of declining enrollment. I just did the numbers. We've lost 84 students in 4 years. From 2011 to the fall census. Yeah, 500 students this year, 2014. We had 584 students in 2011, the fall census number. So, anyways, we have sections of classes that we don't have students to fill, and I indicated that in my last report last time. And then I explained that Tier 2 reductions, which was your target for, I think, a 2% decrease, was approximately another $100,000 or so. And those would reflect changes in programming, and that's, I maintain that. So I'll start with the reductions that we came up with, if you don't mind, unless you have questions before I start. So we've reduced.
Or do we want to just say that we still got a little bit of flexibility?
I'll go through. I'm not going to name names. I'm just going to name positions. And we're still working. There are a couple of balls in the air still, but what I'm going to list totals within a couple $1,000s of the target amount of $316,000. It's hard approximating someone's salary, especially with increases, salary increases yet to be determined, so it's a little bit of a moving target. We've reduced 1 FTE in the area of social studies. We've reduced 1 FTE in the PE department. We've reduced 0.4 in high school science. We've reduced 0.4 in one of the high school world languages and 0.2 in another of the high school world languages. That combined with the reduction of 3 paraeducators, sort of on the special ed side, which is an assessment at the district level, but it does have a bearing on our budget, not to the amount that. Not directly. It's an indirect impact. So 3 paraeducators actually totals about $13,000 when you factor in reimbursements.
Prorated impact.
Yeah. So those are our tier 1 reductions. Yes, I'm sorry, those are our tier 1 reductions. The tier 2 reductions, and I think I indicated this last time, include a 0.5 reduction in the library media specialist position. The remaining portion of the middle school transition position and the remaining portion of the middle school literacy interventionist. 0.4 of that 1.4 combined position had been included in one of the previous iterations of the budget.
So is that one position then?
It's two different positions. It's a 0.6 and a 0.8 minus 0.4 already. There was 1 FTE left, but it was being filled by 2 different people in 2 different roles. So
now it would be filled by none? 1?
None.
None, okay.
Yes, it's gone.
So 2 half-time positions.
Yeah, not exactly half, but yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that, again, is about between $313,000 and $316,000.
Okay, questions?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure, I can't, of course, associate an individual to every one of these instances, but I'm not sure I saw the reduction in the movers and shakers of the PLP and the PBGR work that were just presented to us.
That would be world language. There's partial reductions in 2 of the 3 world languages, 0.4 and 0.2.
Partial reductions.
Yes.
So, partial reductions doesn't mean elimination of an entire position, or does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, that's to be determined by the individuals. But it's a remaining 0.6 and a remaining 0.8.
So just to be clear then, if an individual whose name was associated with one of those grants went to 0.8 status and they were willing to stay and work at 0.8 status, that they would retain that grant and could conceivably bring other grant money to the school?
Yes. Yes, I believe the grant is attached to the person in some cases, so if they left, they are the grant winner.
If they choose to take a different position.
Yes,
Grant
yes,
administrator.
yes. Yeah.
I'm assuming they want to stay now, that they've been treated like this.
Yeah, that kind of popped in my head.
Well, I mean, just having lived through it, maybe not. There's an opportunity to build grant money to build it back in. Well, we'll talk about, when we get an opportunity to talk about the rock and the hard place, we will. So I'm trying to tease out what the possibilities and the opportunities are that remain.
with this proposal.
Kurt?
Okay, down here and then over there.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask, but you said you're going to cut PE. We're also going over a wellness policy.
Ironically?
Yeah. Should I ask that at that time? I mean, how is that going to fit into the wellness policy?
Well, they're unenrolled sections again, so we did not, this reflect, when we ran the schedule, we gave it a couple of spins, we looked at numbers, and we didn't have enough students enrolled in the classes. A full-time teacher is essentially 6 sections, 3 classes in the first semester and 3 classes in the second semester. This is, very general, but that's essentially what a full-time teacher's teaching load is. So a teacher needs to fill 6 sections in order to have a full-time job. These are reductions indicated only by lack of enrollment in the classes. So we were short 7.5 or so in the area of social studies, 8 or I don't remember exact numbers, but actually it wasn't just one. There may be a couple tenths left over in the PE area. There aren't enough students to fill all the classes. So
okay, let me ask a little bit more clearly.
Okay.
If the wellness policy says we're going to give everyone an opportunity for 75 hours a week, I'm not going to remember the cut of this position is not going to affect that. That's the question.
Not with the teaching schedule and the student schedule we have presently.
Okay, thank you.
Just to go back to what Neil was asking about the 0.8 and the 0.6, if the teacher has been reduced to working that schedule, I believe that there would be less time in the schedule to be doing grant work. So I think that the consideration there is to think about, Beth said, the respect for that, but also just the time limit that is now put on that person or those people.
Absolutely understood. I'm just thinking about it from a problem-solving place, not my place to do that. And I apologize, I don't mean to sound, I don't know, whatever. But perhaps there are other folks in the school who would work along with that person to make sure that the grant was able to be put together to bring some revenue back in, which might allow that 0.8 to become a 1.0 again in short order. I heard that grant sounded pretty good, so.
I'm just, again, over the past 8 years, having brought approximately $300,000 worth of grant money into this school building for the work that it's hard work. It takes a lot of your time, and it's not just the schedule of the school day itself.
Yep. In the back, I didn't see anyone else, I just looked up.
I think I was good.
Wait, Kathy said she was first.
No, it's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Chris, and then he said he didn't see anyone, so I wanted to make sure that he saw me.
No worries. I just want to say how exemplar our teachers are at the school, because the students have been lessening, and the teachers that noticed it immediately stepped up to the plate and did extra work and made hundreds of thousands of dollars for our school and created the callback system and morning meeting. And these exact teachers are now being treated as a member because of how many kids are in their classroom. You're talking about lasting effects. What message does it send out to the teachers in this building if those teachers are let go after that kind of hard work? Who's stepping forward? It's a very, very scary thing.
So I just wanted to point out a few things. So we are the reduction of a literacy person, we are hoping to add a reading teacher through a grant that we maintain at the central office. So we were hoping to add a reading teacher that would work here at the high school to.
So you mean offset that reduction?
So that reduction, we'll have a new iteration that it will be a reading teacher that would have a classroom that would work with middle schoolers. And then the second thing is that, I can't speak specifically as to numbers, but it's been my experience that most of the grants that we receive here in this SU pay out stipends to the people that do the work within those grants.
hear that there's 2.5 science positions? Or no, did I
No, you
just
heard
hear that?
0.4.
0.4 science.
0.4. Halftime.
And is that gonna affect your science program?
Well, we originally had 6 unfilled sections, but we have five classes that are not max, but they're 24 or so, and they're lab classes, so they're larger. So we worked back in 0.6 of a science teacher to enable 4 teachers, 2 over the course, 2 each semester, to be taught to reduce the class numbers in those sections. So where we might have had 24 enrolled, now we have 2 classes of 12 or so.
What we did is we bumped the number of a reasonable science class and its ability to run a lab. We just had too many kids to run a successful. That's true, Sarah, isn't it? Can't really run 25 kids in a science class. It's a safety issue. So that's why we added them back in. But
I mean, are you anticipating kind of quality of, learning to be diminished a little bit there?
yeah. Anytime there's a reason they call them cuts, because they hurt. And anytime, to do our science program successfully, we really should have all 4 teachers. But because of the budget pressures, we're looking at the enrollment to find windows of opportunity to have a reduction in force. We haven't cut anybody or suggested any cuts of anybody that wasn't doing their job, wasn't talented, and so it's, it is painful, and if somebody has to ask a principal, for instance, is that going to impact the quality of your science program? Of course it is. You have to be honest about that. And will we adapt? Will we make adjustments? Sure. But you have to tell the truth, I think, is that these things are all painful.
I know we're talking about this fiscal year, the budget. You mentioned that the enrollment was down. How many kids? 84 since the fall of the 11-12 school year.
Has any measurements been taken on the kids coming in?
Yes, and I've got the figures. 2011, and this is total enrollment for 7 through 12. So the high school, I've also worked out the high school figures. We have 364 students, 9 through 12 this year. We dropped down to 337. That's high school alone next year. And then we hover at 340, and then we go down to 300 the following year. So that's 300 students, 9 through 12. Total in 2011, which is as far back as the numbers that I could dig up for, we're 584 in the 7 through 12. We'll have 500 students, 7 through 12, next year, 14-15 school year. We drop below 500 the following year. We hover around 470 for the next 3 or 4 years, and by 2021, when our kindergartners enter as 7th graders, we'll be at 450 students, 7 through 12. So we will never.
350.
What?
Did you say 300?
I'm sorry, 450. Yeah.
So Jim, some envelope math for you. Just to frame, because we're talking about the decline in enrollment, and I've had to give this a lot of thought, just to frame that equates to a loss of $800,000 in revenue to the school over the past 4 years. So every student is about $9,600 coming in from the state. So 30 students less, you can do the math between this year and next year. 30 students less, and on and on. So I just wanted to.
Christina?
When you looked at that scheduling, was that over just the first semester, or was it over the course of the whole year?
They work out the schedule for the whole year. And we work out the number of sections, number of students who've selected a particular class, how many are likely to, get it, and then we figured out how many sections we need. So, 63 students in a particular class. It might be 3 sections depending on the discipline, it might be 4 sections depending on the discipline. They're generous sizes, but within reason. There's one class that we only had 4 students and we elected not to run it.
And I was wondering if the fact that students have to take certain required classes, does that factor into the fact that maybe some of those classes might not have as many students in them? I mean, is that fair to say? It's not just that it's the lack of students, it's because they have to take something else instead.
Sure, there are distribution
Yeah.
requirements
Right.
yet, they
Yeah.
still are. So, yeah, of course, and it's, of course, the completely elective classes, like foreign language, that often take the hit in situations like this. A kid goes, well, I don't know, I'm gonna go to college, do I need my 4th year of French, or am I gonna take an extra science? It's those kinds of decisions that drive the numbers, but they don't drive them the same way every year either.
Lou?
Just in my own budgeting experience, you always do the what ifs, how can you tinker with the numbers, and you've done the tier 1 and the tier 2. So this is a what if, and I don't know how it would work out. What if you took the savings in tier 2 and applied them to tier, I'm just trying to figure out if you could shift your tiering at all.
Well, the board asked us to reduce by the tier 1, the total in tier 1 and tier 2. So I can't shift. There was a tier 3 that brought us to about 400,000.
Right, but I guess, if a conversation ensues tonight about, is it tier 1, is it tier 2, is it both, knowing what came out of the special budget meeting on the 31st, let's do a what if. What if it were just the savings accrued in tier 1 of $210,000? Would you then consider taking some of the cuts from tier 2 and applying them to tier 1 to get to that 210?
I would take my direction from the
Well,
board.
if
I guess,
the dollar is...
I'm not recommending any of these cuts. I mean,
Sure.
Ed and I worked on these for a long time. These are, none of this is easy. It's all very, very difficult, and we're not recommending any of them. I mean, we feel like many of the people here, we see these programs, but, we had to remove that from the equation and just look at the dollar. What would we need to reduce by to meet these targets? And that's essentially what it is. I mean, we've already pared down a lot of co-curriculars, a lot of extracurriculars. We had done all that. We don't have any books left in the, except for Go Math, because we made a commitment to that. I mean, we're really slim, and we've already pared down in a lot of the instructional budget. So to come up with $316,000, we're really looking at staffing. This seemed like the best way to do it. Look at enrollments for classes.
Mm-hmm. I guess my question was, if the number you were asked to reduce changed, would you go back and relook at how you got to the numbers in the first place?
We've been going back every day.
No, I know, I realize that.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, just a comment on that. Nothing is done until it's done. I like Yogi Berra. Nothing is done until the budget is passed, right? So we're talking about possibilities, eventualities. We are talking about trying to balance the community's needs with with the rest of the community, the educational community and the rest of the community. And as you know, this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. So we have to look at this as a first step. So that's why I think those of you who were at the workshop understood what we were going towards. So anything more on what the principals have reported? Yep, go ahead.
I just have a question. Whatever you put before the voters, will there be something at least online similar to what was in the book for each section? Because, I mean, between all the meetings, you've thrown a lot of numbers.
Like a revised budget,
Yeah,
for example?
yeah.
You can look
I
at.
mean, you've thrown numbers here and there, and
what ifs, but.
Yeah, our plan is to communicate to the public again. Last time we went out to the public, we spoke to community members, we spoke to community organizations. Hopefully, we'll be able to strong-arm Neil into creating another document and looking at it and adding to it. So yes, everything will be redone again, and, you know, you'll be given every opportunity to either look at it or, you know, get it if you need it on paper.
So there's going to be more discussion, you're going to warn again and let people hear additional thoughts on the matter, or?
What happens now, tonight, is we warn the budget and then pick a date for it to be voted on. In between tonight and that date, we'll be communicating to the community.
Okay. This is what you should do. What you should do is come out with 2 budgets, proposals, and let us vote on one or the other. How's that? One budget is what you need to close the gap, and another is to plead to the community again that, you know, these are the things that are going to take ahead if you don't step up a little bit. I don't know. I mean,
How do you get a majority? How do you get majority voters when you're voting on 2 different budgets?
I'm not a thought guy. I'm just.
I
sent it out there.
I'm always a practical guy.
I don't know. My only worry is, you know, you're going to get to this place, we're going to send out a budget, and then it's done. You know, it seems like there could be more discussion somehow, or more engagement with the community. I don't know.
Well, with respect, Jim, we've had
I know.
four rollicking, really well-attended meetings. I've never seen this kind of turnout in my, you know, however many years I've been doing this. So we have had a lot of opportunity for a lot of input, and a lot of input that isn't necessarily represented in this room right now as well.
Okay, so anything else for the principals? Yep.
Short. Just to point out that these percentages that you're taking out of teachers, so you have a 0.6 or a 0.4, regardless, it lessens the caliber of the school. Because it's not as appealing to a teacher to take a position that's 0.6 or 0.4. And we're going to lose some of the teachers that are given that opportunity for better opportunities when they get a full-time position. So no matter what teachers you're talking about, that technique will certainly lower the caliber of our school.
Understood.
I have a question, I don't know if it's quick, but,
Yep.
has there been any, early retirement considered? Is that off the table?
Yeah, we,
Yes.
we considered it many times, we asked many times, and we got no takers.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was actually asking them. Within this, you know, reiteration that we've been going on, was that considered?
Well, often the board will offer an incentive for retirement. That it's something that apparently they've tried in the past. We can't really ask someone if they're planning on retiring. It's not legal.
Lori, that was when we did have the early buyout, it was a decision made by the SU board, not the individual board.
I see. So, okay.
Part of the contract.
So, but it wouldn't be part of these budget reiterations. Okay, thank you.
I would say if someone in one of these departments decided to retire between now and the end of the year, then the proposed reduction that we've put in place would in effect take care of that reduction.
Right.
Yes,
Got
it
it.
would save a position.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey.
Do you?
Hi.
Oh, Tommy Lee.
I just have a question. I've been looking at these, I wrote all the reductions down or whatever, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm not thrilled with them. I know we're in a pretty tight spot, but have we looked, and I hate to be that guy, but have we looked at Walden? I hate to bring that up again, but.
Yes, we proposed it, as you know.
I know.
In the original round
But
of
since the budget was shot down or whatever, has Walden been looked at again?
It's been discussed several times, Tommy Lee.
And there have been some minor reductions in Walden. I mean, we pared some consulting fees down, some transportation fees, so they've reduced their budget by maybe 10,000 to 15,000 or so. But we have not revisited it again because of the response in the first budget iteration.
Also, haven't they also taken on 2 students that we're bringing home?
Well, they've agreed to, but that.
Agreed to, but agreeing to in some fashions over time, that could also be a savings as well.
Yeah, and that most likely, that might go into partial effect next year, but most likely the year after, so.
You help me remember, what's the budget for Walden?
180.
180?
180,000.
So you gotta bear in mind that, if there are senior staff working at Walden that come in, the contractual obligation under the union contract indicates that those folks would bump somebody else who would bump somebody else, and it wouldn't be a $180,000 reduction. And so what we would end up doing is losing a program that's part of our seed corn and losing people out of the high school as well, so. And I can go on and on about Walden, but I won't.
I was just curious, thank you.
No, it's fair, Tommy Lee. It's a very fair question, and you're right to bring it up.
Yep.
Sherry.
And it's good to be that kind of
Hold
guy.
hold on, just so I know who's behind you. Sherry, and then, yep.
So I understand that you had increased the enrollment targets for Walden. Do we know if those have been met, or, I mean, was that included in your analysis? That you were
Yes,
gonna increase?
yeah, excuse me, I don't like to dress. The process for selecting for Walden is not done. All right, it's always done by this 3rd, 4th week in April. We have a series of interviews, et cetera, and then we meet and we select the kids that we feel best about. Right now, somebody mentioned a number earlier, I can't remember, but we've already got 4 students coming in from outside. We're returning 7, so that's 11. We feel like we're gonna end up with a number over 20.
Nice.
All right, and the metric, one of the things that is dividing 180 by 20 students is coming up with some kind of a feel for how costly it is. One of their problems is that they've got a little bit of paring down to do on transportation to be able to be a more lean and productive program. But we're also looking at them as one of those, looking into the future, seeing them as a cooperating partner with CCV for a 5th-year program. And in that way, they'd be bringing income into the school and not being an anchor in any way. But that's just a couple of the ideas that have been floating around. So it'll be another week. Is that pretty accurate, Becky?
Yeah.
Good thing I saw you there.
Okay, I was gonna call you Sophie's dad, but you're Darren, right?
Sophie's dad, yes.
And then we're gonna move on to the superintendent.
Yeah, just a quick question about Walden. So my understanding now is that the employees are technically employees of the school?
Yes.
They are? Okay, is that across the board with all?
The 2 teachers are.
Okay.
Then they have volunteers from AmeriCorps.
Right.
And I never can keep track of exactly how many. Sometimes there's 2, or then magically there's 5. But so they get, and those are government grant funded. So we do get a little extra value from those people.
Right, right.
But they can't directly supervise kids. But they are support people out there. They run the gardens. They run the harvest and things like that.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the superintendent.
This one, I'm sorry.
We're gonna move on to the superintendent.
I had my hand up.
I understand that, and
Before.
there'll be more time for you to talk later in the agenda. Right now, we're gonna move on to the rest of the reports, and then we'll come back to the discussion afterwards.
And that makes sense.
Yes. Go ahead, Tom.
Just a couple of things. One is, I want to impress upon everyone, if it hasn't been done so already, that what's at issue here is what our communities are willing to pay in support of the educational program. It is not about the quality. We've already established that that is superior. So that's the issue at hand. Another important piece of this discussion, and I just want to update, is that we're in a negotiating year for the teacher's contract, and that will have an impact on budget as well. I'm happy to report, I think, that we have been meeting since December. We've had 5 or 6 meetings thus far and scheduled 3 more for early May. So we're looking to have a conclusion to that process before the school is out this year. Is that fair, Nancy? That's all.
Anything else? Thank you. Business Manager?
So this is a projection that includes the bills that we'll be approving tonight.
Okay.
So just looking quickly at revenues received to date, today we actually received word that we would be receiving about $600,000 as our second quarter, our second trimester special ed reimbursement. So that's included in here, and actually it brings our special ed reimbursement right to budget. So any additional monies that we receive from at the end would be over budget. And this installment that we received projects to year end. So if, you know, we might receive another 100,000 or so, so that would be extra. And I actually have that in here, outstanding as 100,000. So revenues received to date, $7.5 million. We are still due some monies from the education fund, and that includes property taxes for three of the five towns, plus some monies from the state education fund, which we will receive within the next 2 weeks. We would also receive the final installment on the transportation grant. The special ed reimbursement of about $100,000, that comes in September after I file the final reports.
So is that, do you expect that, or is that?
I think so. I mean, looking at the way costs are trending, it could be another 100,000. Extraordinary cost, I think another 96,000 or so. We've received 125,000 of that amount today, this week. The driver's ed reimbursement, that doesn't come until the fall for the second semester. There's some vocational reimbursement monies that have not come yet. The Hannaford reimbursement comes after year end, and then just other miscellaneous. So right now we're looking at actual revenues of about $10,175,000 compared to our budget of $10,239,000. So closing in on that budgeted amount. Expenditures to date, we'll look in the reports in a minute. We've spent a little over $8 million. Encumbered to date is $1.3 million, and that is salaries, Social Security, and municipal retirement for employees that are under contract. And for teachers, that those salaries are also paid out in July and August, so after year end. We have benefits. We have 4 months of benefits outstanding, so that's May, June, July, and August. We still have the state support to the technical center. I'll get a memo to record to make that entry, and they'll give me the specific amount, and that's the expense side, and then also in the education fund there is a revenue side, where I carve that out of the total. We still have some Idea B monies to pass along from the central office for special ed, and I try to wait to the end of the year to assess where we're going to get the most benefit for those expenses. We still are paying special ed tuition. Some students we pay monthly for their tuition, and then just some estimates for special ed costs, utilities. Transportation, we owe money to Ferrisburg for transporting their high school students, and we typically pay that in May. And then we have some tax anticipation interest that would be due in June, and then some other, the unanticipated program costs, the other regular day-to-day expenses.
So, not putting a number in on that one.
I can't guess at what those
Like
are.
0 would be nice.
Yeah, that 0 would be nice.
Or negative, even better, but.
You know, I mean, you'll
didn't put anything
see.
in there last time either.
I mean, you'll see in the bills, we've had quite a few repair bills, maintenance bills, or some high ones.
Don't say.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question on the special ed side of things. So just, in the revenue, you're looking at an outstanding $100,000 reimbursement from the state or feds, whichever side that would be.
Something like that, yeah, from the state.
And then our outstanding costs include $150 for tuition and another $25. So basically, if you kind of look at those two in their own pod, and I don't know if this is fair, but that's adding $75,000 to that deficit in the bottom line.
So the special ed reimbursements, when we receive the reimbursement from the state, they try to project out what, according to what I've already sent them, what it might be. So, they feel that they've sent us everything.
And you think they're gonna send us another $100,000?
I think so. And
So
then
when they do, we're still gonna have spent $75,000 more, which is okay, that's our share. But I'm just trying to square that between the two lines.
So in last year's budget, the board reduced special education costs, reduced tuition. But the revenues were already budgeted for the higher amount of expense.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions on the board?
Do you want to look through this quickly, or is time?
Yeah.
Stuff you wanna see? Is there something you wanna show us?
There's a couple things.
Yeah, why don't you finish and then we'll take questions.
Okay.
Could you just quickly explain what extraordinary costs are?
Could you just wait until she finishes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
and then we'll
Okay, and
take
then
some
we can do
questions.
that, yeah. So looking at the balance sheet, page 1 of 4, I just want to point out, at the top of the page there is the MBA cash account. It says year-to-date, so our balance is $316,000. Our accounts payable, if we go down a few more items, are $430,000. So just to make you aware of that,
So this would be a cash flow.
this would be a
issue.
cash flow issue. So I am expecting, some state funds to come in a few weeks. Tomorrow's the 15th, by the 20th, so there will be some, anyway. Well, so just FYI for you, we did talk about the deficit note, and when we get to that, we'll discuss that. But, so this is typically what happens at this time of year. This really has to do, is a timing issue for this time of year also.
Is there anything you can do to
We typically
push out our
don't,
payments, so to speak?
oh, no.
No, okay.
And we typically
Sounds
hold
like
the
what I do.
checks that are due back to the SU,
Yeah.
Until the end of the year when we can't hold them any longer.
Yeah, they can wait.
Yep.
Sorry.
So, and then just going to page 4 of 4, just wanted to draw your attention. No, I'm sorry, this isn't the one. Okay, let's keep going. We'll look at something else when we get to, I wanted to point out something to you on the grants. So just looking at the budget to actual, there's nothing specific that I wanted to point out, but if we go to the very last page, go to the very last page of the whole pile. So you see in the middle of the page, so these are where we look at the grants that the high school has. So there in the middle of the page, we have the League of Innovative Schools, we have the Rowland grant, and then we have the Nellie Mae grant. And there is a budget in there, so Rowland does have a salary of $20,000 budgeted, and that's the stipends that they pay out. And then Nellie Mae has a budget in there of $46,500, of which they've already paid out stipends of $29,000 for the work that is done under those two grants. So I just wanted to point that out.
Are those the grants we were talking about earlier?
Yes.
So then these are funds that come to the district, or sorry, to the school's
To the
account,
school.
and then those stipends are paid back to the
teachers that
teachers.
participate in these activities.
And then there's a teacher leader who manages that grant.
There's a teacher that manages that grant.
Okay, and just, I'm rewinding to the mechanics of what we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
That's the grant administrator.
Right, yep, understood.
Plus teachers and those that participate in those grant functions. Okay, so extraordinary reimbursement. So for students that are on an IEP and we spend over $50,000 on that
Individual
student,
educational plan.
then we are reimbursed at a higher rate. We're reimbursed at 90% over the $50,000. And that's what that is.
Where'd you go to?
To the very,
Front
back to
page.
the front.
Extraordinary fund.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to
Mhm.
page 4.
Yep.
Uh,
On the budget to actual?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so they're all negative numbers
On the balance sheet or the budget to actual sheet?
on the budget, on the balance sheet, page 4.
On the balance sheet.
Yeah,
Page 4 of 4.
Yeah.
So this would be the balance sheet. So this shows the fund balance for the grant. So if you're looking at Roland, it had a fund balance at July 1 of $106,000.
okay.
It doesn't maintain its own cash account, so there's a due to from.
Okay.
Nellie Mae had a fund balance of $90,000 at the beginning of the year.
Okay, so this shows how it's paid out.
So this shows the rollover. See, these grants roll over from year to year. We have other grants that we have to close out on an annual basis, and these two we do not.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Tim?
Just more of a comment than a question. On your very first page, you're doing projections.
Mm-hmm.
It's very dangerous to put the word actual April 14, 2014 in that column.
Mm-hmm.
If I were you, I wouldn't let people leave here with that on there, because it's a projection, not an actual.
Well, some of it's actual.
Some of it's actual as of
Some
today.
of it is,
Some
if
of
you're
it is.
mixing
Thank you, Tim.
apples and oranges in accounting, I worry that you look down quickly without seeing the word outstanding, and
I'll move the date to the left for the next time.
thank you, please.
So we'll cross that out, that date right there, and put it up here.
Carol?
It's just wanting to get my constituents' question heard, Susan.
Oh, okay.
That's okay.
Who's next?
My question wasn't about budget, so I don't know if this is the
Okay.
appropriate time, so I would defer to Carol.
So, in the Addison Central Supervisory Union, there's always a fund balance in their actuals 2 years prior. Once again, there's not a fund balance. I believe it's fund balances that are inaccurately accounted for that's destroying, that's sending us into the deficits. So you reported in FY14, FY12, right? Your estimation was 450,000. The actual was like 483,000. And then it's just gone. It doesn't hit an actual.
So it's included in the budgeted amount, the $10,239,000. So it's included.
In the revenue?
Yes, it's in the budget.
Yeah, expenditures.
In the revenue?
It's in the revenues, yes.
Of 2014?
It's in the budget, the $10,239,000. It's included in there, Carol.
Just looking for hands. Any other questions? Mike?
Hi, Lynn.
Kathy, I'm just looking at that balance sheet on that second page, on the back of the second page, for food service.
Yeah.
Can you clarify, is that really a negative number, that 232?
So those are, it is a negative number, but it's not, so beginning with the sales revenue of 104,000, those numbers are those are revenue numbers. So in school accounting, the revenue is mixed in with the balance sheet, and then the other statement is the expense. So if you wanted to know how the food service was doing, you would start at 104,000 and add down to the 12, and then you would go to the budget to actual and look at Fund 2 there to see how much we have paid. But I'll warn you, since the revenues now have to go through the central office and they're combined, there's really like a 2-month lag time on getting those to the high school.
As well as the other schools also?
As well, yeah, it's just, you know, we don't get the check for 30 days, and then it takes us then we have to wait till the next time that we cut checks. So it can take up to 60 days to get the funds to the schools where they belong.
So I understand that it's in the budget. It was in the proposed budget, but it's not in the actual. So the question is, well, taxpayers can't benefit from something if it's not in the actual. And so that's my question for years and years and years. How can fund balances benefit the taxpayer if it is not, if the revenue does not end up in the actual budget? And Mark Ottinger of the Department of Education, he writes, I see the surplus question is somewhat simplistic terms. If there is a surplus, it must be booked as a revenue for the following year unless the electorate votes to spend it elsewhere. That said, I would speculate that an audited surplus could change if it were to be discovered that the original figure was inaccurate. But I assume the board has accepted the audited figures, so I assume that they've been accurate. In addition, a school board or one or more members of a school board could express the opinion that a surplus or a portion of it be recommended to the electorate to be applied, contingent the necessary electric vote to some other purpose. And so Mark Ottinger is saying that the number can't change.
So the problem here is that we are comparing accounting revenues with the budget. So in the financial statements, the carry forward is not a revenue item. In the budget, it is a revenue item.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Kathy. Anything else?
Not at this time.
Any other discussion on business manager? Okay, Hannaford Career Center. We are still looking for an at-large community member to be on the Career Hannaford Center board. We have been missing one for about 6 months. We've advertised in forums and newspapers. So if anyone would like to volunteer for that from the community, or if anyone knows of anyone who would like to volunteer, it's something that would be greatly appreciated. At the Hannaford Career Center this past meeting, we talked about a alumni feedback report that was put together by one of the board members. And we had 37 businesses representing over 100 alumni in the county give us feedback, and the highest mark was 5, and the measure was 4.6. So it was based on many different criteria. I'm not going to go over all of them tonight, but it's something to be proud of. So that's the Hannaford Career Center. So moving on to action items. Are there any questions about Hannaford?
I'll just take a moment to thank you for continuing to serve. I know you have a tremendous amount to do chairing this board as well, so
Yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome.
If anybody is able to do that.
Okay. So entertaining business matters?
Bills, right?
Yep, approval
Okay.
of bills.
For $657,624.98.
Are you moving that we approve those bills?
Mhm.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion?
What do you see in there?
I see a lot of the things that we talk about all the time. There's tuition fees, and other things like that that we've been spending a lot more on, and it's apparent based on the volume.
What was the figure again?
It was $657,624.98.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, then I'd like to, those who are in favor of approving the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstentions? Okay, brings us back to you, Kathy.
Okay, so, we have been having a discussion about the deficit loan. And so I had a motion to borrow the amount of the deficit, but to repay it over 2 years. So the motion that I need is to borrow the deficit and repay it over 1 year. Now, we agreed to absorb the deficit in 1 year, that we did not agree to borrow the money and pay it back in 1 year, and that is specifically what I need.
Do we have?
Before we discuss, is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second?
Second.
Oops.
Do we have time to see our budget go through vote and pass before executing said loan? We might not, I understand that. I'm just wondering whether it's
When-
premature to execute the loan just yet.
When is the next meeting?
For this, May 12th.
May 12th, so that's the day before
The vote,
the
so
vote.
no.
If
well,
we, the 13th.
So the answer would be no.
The answer is no?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a motion on the floor to borrow funds to pay for the entire deficit in 1 year. And it's been seconded. Is there any other discussion?
So we're borrowing it because of cash flow, is that? Okay.
So can you borrow a little more and save some of these positions?
That's called a budget vote. I'm not being cute, literally, that's the mechanism.
Yes, Tim?
I wasn't aware that the public could have input on your vote, but that, I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah.
We encourage you to set a budget to pay the deficit in 1 year. I had no idea you were going to go borrow the money. I thought we were being taxed for it.
Yeah, but
Why
the-
aren't we being taxed for it?
So,
You're being taxed for it next year in the year that it's repaid.
Okay, but we have to pay it in between. Gotcha, okay, thank you.
in the same way we do a note in anticipation of receipt of revenue, which we have to do because taxes don't get paid right away.
Okay,
Yep. Okay.
I got it. I was sweating it.
It's all good.
Okay,
So do we
and
vote
hearing no more discussion, I'd like to call for a vote, and all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thanks, Kathy. Okay, we're not gonna award a construction contract. We'll wait till Jeff is back to talk about that. Policy matters, wellness policy, where we have the wellness policy and the second read of the wellness policy and an adoption tonight. Hi. Are you our wellness policy man?
I'm one today.
Okay.
Thanks for having me back. Lori, thank you for your comments and input. Appreciate that. I did send around an email to everybody
Yep.
this afternoon, so I guess the first question, just to follow up from last month, was implementation and how that was gonna play out the first year. So I did attach to the email a guide for implementation that we drafted up that we would follow for the first year if adopted.
Okay.
I think the hot topic is that PE piece that's in there. And I guess for those in the crowd, there is a piece in the wellness policy that can be, I guess, viewed as possibly asking for budgetary support for a staff person. I guess our biggest concern with that piece is the PE position that's possibly getting cut, and would the requirements be met if that position was cut. To reread it, the area in question was, this is the required piece of the question, or the piece of the number here. The district will meet the standard requirements of providing students in grades K through 8 with at least 2 physical education classes per week, and provide students in grades 9 through 12 with 1 and 1.5 years of physical education or the equivalent thereof. So that is actually a requirement of all students in the state of Vermont. With that PE, full-time PE cut, would that be met? I don't know.
We can still meet it. The addition in 4 through 9, I don't know. I'm gonna say no. Without, looking into it deeper, but just on the surface, it doesn't look like.
The piece of that, number 3, still goes into, which is what our wellness committee feels strongly of, is that we will not decrease the number of minutes of physical education in order to accommodate the master schedule. So we are asking and pleading with you to try and work and look again at, with the PE teachers to make sure that those requirements are met. We would also like for the last piece to be left in, being with the wording of we will work toward the NASPE recommendation of 150 minutes of physical education per week for K through 6 and 225 minutes per week for 7 through 12. We're not asking for anything but looking at it as a group as time goes on to try and meet those in possibly some other ways, not necessarily by hiring an extra staff person. The other portion that was in question with input that I got over the month was the health services and who exactly would be performing those health services, and that is the nursing staff. And we could elaborate on that a little bit if needed. I think we, as a group, we're going to look at that and tweak that around a little bit just for wording to make it a little bit more clear. Yes.
So we're not going to adopt this tonight.
I am asking for a
Yes.
second
Yes.
reading and for it to be adopted or to be brought back to the group for more discussion so that we can move it forward for maybe next month.
Lori, we had anticipated this would be a second reading and adoption tonight, and then in May, it's going to the SU board for formal adoption as an SU policy. So each.
Okay, I guess I got a little confused because I thought you said you might tweak it some more.
Well, wording meaning like the input that you gave was, for example, it states at the beginning that the, district will work towards, and then it lists it. It's not so much clear, so some of the things, that you stated in your input would be to just change that wording to, we shall, to add that little pieces to the beginning. That's kind of really what.
Big difference between those two, though.
I mean, ideally, we want to keep it as is. With the little comments that you gave, yes.
I'd be uneasy about moving and adopting a policy for which there may be some changes from strive to, and it is the policy of, to shall.
Okay, so let me get out the exact, because I don't think the questions, Lori routed all her questions to.
everybody.
While you are, can I ask Mr. Cook a question?
Absolutely.
What's the relationship between sports team participation and PE credit?
As of right now, Ed went out here 3 years ago, 5 years ago, the administration, without input from the PE department, after the fact, said.
I'm not gonna help you out again, then.
But that's the history, is he came at some point and said, here's what we're going forward with. We're gonna offer up to 1 credit for a student, you know, so Tommy plays football. He can get up to 1/2 credit per varsity, no, he can get 1/4 credit per varsity season for a total of 1/2 credit for football. And then when, you know, Tommy plays baseball, he could get 1/4 credit. When he plays, now he's playing lacrosse.
Good example, by the way.
Right, he could get 1/4 credit per varsity season for 1/2 credit. So, but the percentage, and again, as a PE teacher, and a coach and an athlete, I know that those athletes are putting in hours upon hours of mostly hard physical work. My question after this happened was, who, other than, I know Peter Manine gets a list, not to throw Peter into this mix, but he gets a list, a roster at the beginning of the season and a roster at the end of the season. And if Tommy was at practice at the beginning of the season when the roster was made and the coach says, yep, he finished the season, he gets 1/4 credit. No, there's no follow through, there's not a certified physical educator that's saying he's doing this, this, and this to meet the standards. I, as a coach, knowing, you know, I came from my lacrosse practice, my guys are getting, you know, great instruction, they're getting, you know, they're working hard, they're putting in 1.5 hours to 2 hours every day. But if we're looking at teachers, certified teachers teaching their sport, it's not a certified PE teacher. I'm not saying the coach isn't qualified to coach baseball or wrestling or whatever. It's not a certified PE teacher.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, the root of my question is that somebody like Tommy would be absolutely nailing their 225 minutes of PE. Would they, or not? In conjunction with...
practice, well, here's the difference. If you're looking at, it says the NASB record, so the NASB recommend, or the NASB is the National PE Organization. They're the one that sets the standards for the whole country. So they're saying 225 minutes a week for high school students in a certified, in a physical education class with a certified PE teacher. So nothing against the baseball coach, who does a fantastic job. He's not a certified coach. So yes, he, you know, and Tommy's a great athlete. Tommy's out there giving his all, but if you have that, not to pick on baseball, the 3rd string right fielder who isn't in the scrimmage, isn't, you know, he's kind of on the team, he's getting a credit, or 1/4 of a credit, to be on that team, basically is what it is.
Thank you.
I just want to mention the educational quality standards are, were, even though they were hijacked by Ed's organization right at the end, it does say each school shall provide students in grades K through 8 with at least 2 physical education classes per week. Each school shall provide students in grades 9 through 12 with 1.5 years of physical education or the equivalent thereof. So the language in the educational quality standards has changed from the old school standards because it says or the equivalent thereof, which means that's the wedge that you can drive the athletic participation into. Each school shall offer options for students in grades K through 12 to participate in at least 30 minutes of physical activity within or outside of the school day. Physical activity may include recess and movement built into the curriculum. I've never had recess, but does not replace physical education classes. So those two paragraphs are the paragraphs that apply at the state level to PE within our curriculum, Anything that goes beyond it has to be adopted by the board as an enforceable local standard. So,
Can I say one more thing?
Just a moment, just one moment. It seems like the discussion is going on, and this is an actionable item, so I just wanted to get, something in place if we are going to vote on it. Does it seem like there will be a vote tonight, or? I know that Lori is
I'm sorry.
not looking forward to it.
Yeah. There's a real difference between shall and.
Well,
I'm gonna follow your lead here.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I went through this pretty in-depth, spent a little bit of time going through it, and I think it could use a little more teeth without a lot of cost to us. I mean, it's not that I want to reduce it, it's that I want to make sure people understand that this is really important, like, encourage district-wide health initiatives that include daily movement for students and staff. I think that should be a shall. I mean, people should move. I mean, this is wellness, am I out of line here? I don't know.
No, because I'm following your lead. You analyzed it in depth.
Yeah.
I
think it is
tied up with other stuff.
I mean, as a group and working on it, I think it's a fine line between just that of telling staff what to do and what we recommend that they do, especially in an area like this. It's a lot different than math, reading, writing, it's a different mindset. It's a different belief.
I wasn't trying to get more discussion. What I'm trying to find out is whether we should table this, or is there an actionable item that we're going to move forward with?
I'd actually like to move we table it so that we can get that sorted out, and that's with no disrespect at all. I mean, because you're right, it's important.
Yeah, I mean, would it be helpful if you and I talked a little bit more? I mean, would that be appropriate?
Are you saying you and I?
I think,
Yeah.
well, if I may, it might be useful to take what you're proposing and let Lynn share that with other members of the committee that's worked long and hard on this, as well as the other boards that are gonna be looking at it. We can come to May and approve it then as well.
I'd be more than happy, though, to have you come to a group setting or.
Okay, so you're suggesting that my comments and questions and suggestions go back to the committee?
Yeah.
And they decide whether they think it's important to implement them or not implement them?
And bring it forward.
And then
in
bring
May.
it forward?
Yes.
I'm happy with
I'd
that.
probably even like to meet with you ahead of time, just to get
Just to get
super
some
clear
more,
on that.
yeah.
Can I get invited to that committee meeting?
Yeah, okay, go ahead and
Please.
work out the
Yeah.
details.
Seriously.
And
It's
if you
just
wanna
the
go
difference
also-
between shall
No,
and
I'm
not
serious,
shall
because the
is
thing
huge.
about the
And
Yes, and I
in
also
whatever
had some
instance.
Makes our
clarifying
heads
questions in
explode.
here that I don't feel like have been clarified.
Okay,
So.
so we're gonna table that until May.
Yeah,
Meeting,
okay.
okay.
Yeah, we're gonna table that until May. We're gonna move on to the next item. We're gonna move on to the next item. That's personnel.
You already acknowledged him off the floor, you gotta listen to this question.
We're gonna move on to the next item. It's personnel.
Yeah. And you wonder why the budget doesn't pass in this place.
Peter?
I think you guys have it.
Should be attached.
List of spring coaches. I don't know if there's any questions on
Attached
there.
to the packet.
I can answer the baseball question if anybody wants to ask that.
I didn't get anything.
You don't, there's nothing in the package.
Was it in the,
There's another one.
Okay, any questions, or is there a motion that, to accept?
I will move to approve the coaches as recommended by Peter.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion?
Are these returning coaches, Peter? I'm not as familiar with
I don't have the list right in front of me, but pretty much everyone is returned. We have a new JV lacrosse coach, boys. And we have a newish middle school softball coach. She was here a few years ago to do JV, and she's back doing middle school now.
And you know Tim personally. Tim is the JV voice of lacrosse coach.
He's a staff member.
Can I just say one thing? And I know I haven't been to a lot of budget meetings, or, excuse me, school board meetings, but just the way that, and I know, Kurt, you have to run a meeting, I get that, there's, you know, it's 8:20, whatever, but Neil asked me a question, right?
I did.
I commented. I had another comment to add to the discussion, and it wasn't even a question, it was just kind of a clarifying, here's my thought on the process. And the fact that you cut me off, and it wasn't the first person that you cut off, is maddening. It is maddening that you ask for comments from the community. And this, I've been here this is my family. This is my family, and I understand that things are declining, students are declining, but not to be able to express a concern about my discipline is ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. I'm out.
Okay. So is there a motion on the floor for the?
Jesus.
Yes.
Okay, and it's been seconded. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Or abstentions? Okay, we're on to other, and at the beginning of the meeting, we were asked to add something to the other action item, and that was a question about moving a motion to amend or rescind or some kind of motion.
I would like to move to amend the previously approved FY15 budget from the 9417197 to 9523118, which would take into consideration just the Tier 1 that was presented to us in the last vote, and not the Tier 2.
Could you repeat those numbers one, please?
Sure. 9417197, that's the from, to 9523118, and the difference is $210,804.
Okay, is there a second? Without a second, we can't entertain the motion.
Yeah. It's a bummer. You can't until you get a second.
Not until there's a second.
That's why all these people stayed in this room and have a
Well-
discussion about this. You can't, somebody can second it so we can have a conversation?
They vote no, they can't, if they're not willing to support it, they can't second it.
We've all been waiting.
So maybe we should take a motion to adopt the warning.
Yep. Is there a motion to adopt the warning?
I'd like to see the draft.
Okay. Is there a second? Are you making the motion?
I'm going to make the motion.
Okay.
Yes, that we approve the sum of 9417197 to defray current expenses for the ensuing year, and the remainder here. Second article is to approve the sum of $40,000 for the capital improvements fund.
I'll second it.
Second? Okay, there's a motion on the floor and with a second to warn the sum of $9,417,197 to defray current expenses for the ensuing year 14-15 and pay outstanding orders and obligations. And Article 2, shall the voters, is a motion to warn the second article for the sum of $40,000 for capital improvements. Any discussion?
So I'd like to say something here, and I'm hopeful that my phone will last. And the reason I'm referring to this is because I responded to one of my constituents who works in this school. And I tried to explain to her why I wasn't able to support a reconsideration of the budget decision we made. And my phone is not going to allow me to do that, so I'm not going to try and read it. Instead, I'm just going to try and explain to you what's on my mind. I think I said last time, but I really feel like our budget, our opportunity to support this school with an operational budget year after year is balanced on the head of a pin right now. It's balanced between the incredible great work that happens by everybody that works here, and it's balanced by a narrative that's out there that says that schools spend too much money in a general sense, and it's balanced by a very real understanding that the individual taxpayer in many instances is paying too much. And it's balanced by the fact that, at least for me, the people that I speak to, many people in this room and many people not in this room, and I did not take this decision lightly, people just like me in my own financial demographic are coming to me and saying, I just can't do it anymore. You know, I run the numbers on my own family and my own tax bill, and the fact that we have the declining enrollment that we do, and that we're moving a budget that produces a negative increase in spending, a decline in spending from last year to this year, and that my own tax bill still goes up hundreds of dollars, and I live in a modest home. So I think about that from where I sit, and I'm willing to vote for it. But the problem is, I've had too many people come to me and say, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And my problem is that I want this school to be a strong school. And part of a strong school is everything, Beth, that you talked about earlier, all of it. And another part of it is the community support that happens year after year after year. And I am very nervous that if we step back and we do not follow through with the unfortunate reality that's faced with us, that the vast majority of our voters who are not in this room right now are going to turn around and they're going to tell us exactly what they think at the ballot box. And we're going to be back here in a month and a half doing this again with the expectation from the voters that we go even deeper than we already have. I'm trying, my decision is predicated on setting us up for this year, setting us up for next year, setting us up with some trust and some transparency. And I'm so sorry that it has the consequences that it does. It's absolutely heartbreaking to me. But I wanted to explain myself to those of you who have known me for a long time.
Thanks, Dan.
I would also like to add that we're talking about a difference between 1% reduction in our tax rate and a 2% reduction in our tax rate. We're not talking about a 5% difference. We're just talking about from tier 1 to tier 2 goes from 16% down to 15% increase over last year.
Any other comments, questions? Yes?
Will there be some sort of PR campaign to work to try and ensure that this new budget passes, and what can we as a school do to help with that?
As I said before, I believe we're going to do as much as we did before and also look for other opportunities to talk to the community. If there's other ways to communicate to the community that we haven't used in the past, then we certainly are open to ideas. We've tried blogs, we've tried websites, we've tried email, we've tried going to community organizations, we've tried the newspaper. So if something comes up like that, if there's a great idea, and feel free to move on it. We'll provide you with whatever content we can. But you know, the plan right now is to provide an updated budget and provide another document like the one before that explains the percentages of the increases. Does that answer your question? Okay. Rick?
Were there individual call lists going out last time?
Individual what?
Individual call lists where PTO, where groups of parents get together and call, and often it was a call of, please go out and vote.
Yep.
Although I'm not sure that that's how it has to be. But one of the best ways of getting school budgets passed is for the teachers and the parents to have individual conversations with other voters. And this used to do that quite a bit. I know it's harder to get people's cell phone numbers than it used to be. But individual call lists where we sit down and actually say, who knows this person, who knows this person, is how we got many of our budgets passed many years ago.
And
And
that
it's
certainly
something
is
that
another
people
way to
can-
do it.
A lot of people can participate in that.
Yep. Carol?
I think my problem is that I've never, I have never experienced this kind of behavior in this school. The teachers have been great, and our family has been around here, and we've done mainstream, we've done special ed. But what really puts a negative bent is that when you decide something, you want us to back in. Now, parents weren't surveyed. We weren't asked if maybe we would, for 1 year, give the teachers a chance to get done what they needed to do, and maybe do the club sports. I mean, we haven't been asked. I know Burlington, their administrators' salaries, I think it was like 10,000 was taken, and I asked about how about a salary free. So we're never asked about anything, and then we're cut off. And it's not community. It's, I'm a person, I like my voice, even though communication gets crazy at times, but I like to be opinionated, and I know there's a lot of parents. I know when Christina started her group, there was like 20, 30 parents that came. They're gone. Can we ask them? I mean, can we begin to ask parents if they feel that this school is their community, and begin to understand, do we really have a voice in this school? And I don't feel that we do. But I want to leave you on one note, and that is, you tell me there's never a fund balance in the actual. So this is an annual report. The actual of 2008, the fund balance was $240,753. That was the fund balance of 2006. It made it to the actual. It has to. I don't think you should ask the voters for any more money until that's resolved and experts are brought in. Because I know I'm not an expert, but I have talked to them.
Any other discussion, questions? Hi, Christina.
Hi, I guess I'm just picking up on what Lori said. I would just ask you as a board to consider that 1% difference, and if you really think, do you really believe that would make or break a vote? I don't see it personally, but please reconsider.
So there's a motion on the table to warn, and I don't have it in front of me, the two articles. Yeah, question, Lou?
Well, actually, I was going to support Christina. I know at the budget planning meeting on the 31st, I was vocally supportive of looking at Tier 1 and Tier 2 costs. And I've given it a lot of thought since then, and I was going to ask Kathy, what is the difference in the net effect to the tax? What is it? And Lori already said it's 16 versus 15. I have to say that I have changed my mind. I would like you to consider just the Tier 1 cuts. So I guess if I can have my mind changed, and I think some of you know I can be pretty firm in my positions, but you know what? I think we should give it a shot. There's nothing to say that the 15% is going to pass either. So do we give it a shot knowing that a 1%, Kathy, can you translate, like, what's a 1% equal in a dollar sense for I mean, I just don't have a perspective. If we're trying to translate this into what is this going to do to my taxes, I may be asking a heavy lift on a short.
0.0174 cents.
Huh?
0.0174 cents as a percent.
Okay.
Yes, but what does that mean on a house equal to $100,000?
Yeah, if you have a, well.
$174?
There you go.
Is that right? Did I do the math right or
Right,
not,
so
Kathy? Or
first-
is it $17.4? $174.
So Ferrisburg, with the amount that's been warned, combined with your preliminary
No, I don't think that's right.
elementary school rate, you're looking at an increase of 10.8% in your taxes. I know I'm not answering your question.
So you need to go to your tax bill,
Well,
figure
no,
that, and
I'm
then
not worried
factor
about
in
my
your
tax bill. I'm
CLA
talking
thing
about
and all
the
that.
difference between 16 and 15. Just to see if it can save some teachers and however the principals choose to spin this particular cat. And if we have, I don't know that we have any better chance at 15 than we do at 16. Could we try the smaller amount?
So the second tier does include the transition/literacy position that's being replaced by a reading teacher with grant funds from the SU. So,
Right, but if the principals were asked merely to find 210, it might look different than asking them to come up with 316. So that's really going back to my original question of Stephanie and Ed. If you were asked to reduce the amount you had to cut, would it look different? And I saw Ed's head nod, so it may not look like.
it's always,
I would ask for clarification. Are they charging us with finding just a dollar figure? That's the agreement we had a week or so ago. So, I mean, I would need that clarification.
Right. Is it
But
a
I think,
dollar?
yes, it would look different, I think, if we were just talking about a different dollar figure.
So that may have a material effect in what our staffing looks like and what our services look like for 1 point. I would urge the board to reconsider their position.
I just have a general comment. From a lot of discussions I've been hearing about the whole state school system and everything, I think you're really working uphill. Just because I think it's more principle. I don't think that the voters are going to the polls necessarily because of the Vergennes Union High School budget. I think they're going because, like you said, whether you're flat balanced or you're reducing your budget here, they're still seeing increases. I don't know necessarily if you're gonna be able to do anything here, in my opinion, to offset that. I don't know if it's gonna have to happen something more on the state level, where they're providing more funding to this school, or, you know. I'm not necessarily sure whether or not you're taking 1% off is gonna make that much of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, just so you know, sir, certain members of our board have met with a lot of different people in different venues, and I personally have met with folks who truly, first believed the problem was all at this table and with this organization, overspending, profligate budgeters. Began to understand that through conversations with us that it really is a balance between local spending and also what's happening at the state. As I made in my sort of speech, I really believe that voters, when they read the outcome of this meeting, will say, okay, our local folks have gone, they've done what we feel they had to do. We will support our local folks, and at the same time, continue to have that dialogue. The dialogue in Montpelier is going. That's started now, and I think that's got some critical mass. So.
And I think what you're also fighting here, Neil, is that, there's been increases and increases and increases, and you say, okay, voters, pass it this time, support your local school, not necessarily what's going on at the state level, but support your local school. Yeah, it's gonna hit your wallet a little bit more in your taxes. We're not gonna guarantee that's not gonna happen next year again at the state level, so it's, I guess I think right now we're at the point, this is it. We've built it up to here. We've been paying all these years, and don't get me wrong, I completely support the school, and I completely support the efforts of your board and everything, and I think you guys are doing a great job. I think it's at the state level. This is just from the conversations I'm listening to on the radio, conversations I'm having with with friends and you know, just acquaintances I run into. So that's, I hate to be the, be the devil's advocate and say, hey, gee, you know, it's not looking good, but I just want to voice that.
Thank you. Yes.
As of right now, the 1% that you're questioning is going to be cutting the grants, the supervisors of the grants that have brought the school money. If there's any way to cut that from a 1% to maybe a 0.5%, if there's any way to consider what those losses would be in terms of people and the money they bring in, because it's not just the difference of 1% and 2% cuts, it's key teachers who need to be considered as key teachers in this building. Because 2 of them, I would imagine, if not 3, who are offered part-time positions, the minute they get an opportunity to get a full-time position somewhere, will be long gone. And who we replace them with will be far inferior to who's currently in those positions. And it'll be a huge loss of money.
Good evening. I'm sorry I was late. I made the motion 2 weeks ago to propose the budget figure, and I'll take responsibility for doing that, and I'll explain to you why. I think the first thing that's really important is to respond to Stephanie's question. From my perspective as a board member, we are in fact voting on a budget. We are voting to provide the administration with the means to operate the school. It is not this board's decision with respect to any particular personnel issues. Whether the opportunity exists to adjust program, to make different decisions than so far have been made, is the purview of the administration. It is not this board's job to do that. I think that's critically important. We did not choose any positions and say those are the ones to go. Okay? I made the motion on a specific dollar amount. Let me explain why. Okay? This board supported a budget that went out on town meeting day that contained no reduction in force. Okay? This library was filled 2 or 3 times, and we supported that budget. But the campaign was not necessary only in here. The campaign had to take place in the community. And when town meeting day came, it was not successful. And I believe I can speak for all the board members here. We voted for it not only as board members to set the warning, we voted for it on town meeting day too. We don't need to be convinced about the quality of the school and the necessity to support your efforts. Our job is to put forth a budget that can pass. And what Neil has said is critically important. We cannot afford as a school community to go back out and lose. We cannot establish a culture in which defeated school budgets become the norm. We have to win this next vote. So I proposed that budget. I made the motion because it is a reduction as compared to this current year's budget. That was my reasoning. It was absent Tier 1 or Tier 2. It was so that we could go out to voters and say, we're telling you some hard truths. We're being accountable and we're being transparent. We're dealing with a deficit. We know what's coming up the following year in terms of a deficit. We're asking you to support a budget that's going to result in a tax rate increase in excess of 14%. We're asking you to swallow a very tough pill. And in return for that, voters, we've bent the cost curve. We reduced that portion of school expenditures that the school board
has direct control over. That was the reason I proposed that, so that we could have that message to the voters. If you all believe that that's not a sound approach, if you have a better approach, I'm eager for better solutions. This is not the outcome that anybody wants. But I can't, in good faith, support half measures and things that I believe in my heart will not win when we go back out next time. I think not winning is much more dramatic in terms of its effect on the school. Thank you.
Andy?
Just a clarifying question. If the administration has freedom to pick programs, does that mean, say, a program that costs $160,000 and serves 15 or 18 kids is back on the table too? Walden?
I think the board made its perspective regarding Walden known at the first big budget meeting we had, and I personally spoke to why I feel that that program is important, again,
Well,
at the subsequent two.
I just wanted to clarify that, because Jeff said everything was on the table just now. And that would seem to solve half of the deficit, so I was just wanting to clarify that. Thank you.
I saw several hands.
Someone else.
I think you're next, and then, is there someone back there I missed? No? Okay, go ahead.
If everything's on the table, we've been told through various channels that things like any more athletics, transportation, etc., are seen as blackmail to the public. And so everything that's on there as a cut, because of that, is based on teachers. No secretaries, no transportation, no custodians, no administration, whatever it may be, no other options are on there except teachers. And you're saying that's not your job to pick what's on there, but it is your job, I guess, to say what can or can't be a protected category for what's on there?
I don't have an answer for it.
It was probably more of a rhetorical question anyway.
I was gonna say, there seems like a mixed message from the board.
Okay. Any more discussion about the motion that's on the floor, which is the warning that for the high school, there's 2 articles, I can read them again. It's been seconded, and we're discussing that. Yep. David?
I guess now that this discussion's been opened up that way, I'm confused about the mixed message too. Are we talking about specific cuts, or are we talking about a general dollar amount cut? I'm not clear on where this is gonna end up, because it's gonna be hard for the voters to decide whether or not they wanna vote on a budget if they don't know what's gonna be in it.
Right.
Where is the money gonna be? Where is this dollar amount of budget gonna be allocated, and who's gonna decide that and when?
Okay, so just to clarify what we're doing right now. Right now, we're setting a dollar figure for the budget to be warned and voted on. That dollar figure is $9,417,197. We've had grand discussions about what that means to the school, and the administration has told us what it could mean. But when it comes down to it, unless the budget is passed, nothing really matters. So if the budget isn't passed, then it doesn't matter what the budget would have supported. So what we're trying to do is give everyone an example of what the budget might require if it's passed. It doesn't mean that the numbers that we wrote down here are in stone. They're not. It doesn't mean that if something happens between now and when the budget passes, or even after the budget passes, and it affects the way that we fulfill the budget, then something will change then too. So it's not like we're saying, tonight we're determining exactly how this budget will be implemented. We're trying to give everyone a good idea what might happen though, because you have to look at it that way. Did that help, Dave?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Carol and then Christina?
Well, the second question down. And, personally, I feel that, the taxpayers gave you $2.8 million in capital funds this year. And to delay that for one more year, to help, within education, should be considered. Yeah, I mean, it was voted down. I don't care by 6, but it was voted down. And you gotta ask yourself that if the people who voted for it knew that their vote for the 40,000 was gonna cut a teacher position, I think you would have had more against it, you know? So hopefully we get that message out there too.
Christina?
I'm sorry, I'm just really confused now about what you just said. So if you pass your motion and you make the $316,000 in cuts, are you saying that what Ed and Stephanie have proposed in this room tonight could necessarily change? It's not a given? Is that how it works?
Let's say somebody got a position somewhere else.
Right, I mean,
Okay, I mean,
you
let's
don't have
just say
control
that
over
happened. Let's
but-
just say that happened. Then, you know, that might alleviate a little bit of pressure. That might cause these guys to do something a little different.
Okay, but,
These things can
sure.
happen.
But are these the teaching positions? If you say yes to this motion tonight, this is what's gonna happen, unless somebody takes a job someplace else,
Or someone, you
somebody
know,
gets hit by a bus, like you talked about earlier.
Or some grant comes in that allows there to be a backfill of a position using some district money, or somewhere you come up with $20,000 for some reason, and that allows you to plug back in 0.2 FTE. I mean, these are the flexibilities that occur. These are the ebbs and flows that occur, you know, it's.
so just to be clear, again,
Okay.
the dollar figure has been set.
Right,
The motion on the floor is a warning of that dollar figure and a warning of a $40,000 contribution to a capital improvement fund. That's the motion on the floor.
I still urge you to go back to the 2%, or the, this doesn't seem like it's.
Okay, right.
So the motion is basically a dollar figure. What the administration came up with is, gives us here tonight and those who we spread the word of mouth to, an example how to come up with that money that get to that $9 that you're thinking, that you have on a motion in a second. It isn't what is said, this is how we're gonna do it, this is how it can be done. What we're voting on now is just, this is the amount we're asking for the budget to be.
What we are voting on, not you are. Yeah, what we're gonna vote on is that we're gonna warn this dollar figure, these dollar figures to vote on a specific day in the future.
Right.
The implementation of that budget, if it passes, is up to the administration. We want everybody to know, though, that because of contracts that we have with the teachers and the support staff and the professionals, teachers and professional staff and the support staff, there, I got it out, we have to make decisions ahead of time. Because, you know, it's good to let people know what's going on. Yeah. So in order to do that, following the process and keeping it legal and making sure that, you know, this is something we can implement, we try to have workshops and conversations, you know, talk to as many people as we can about what might happen. You know?
And that's what I'm trying to point out.
Yeah.
It might happen.
Yeah, it could happen.
And by what you're voting for, let me stay corrected.
Yeah.
What you're voting for tonight is a dollar amount. It's not affirmative or running down what the administration came up with a suggestion. It's a dollar, you're voting on the dollar amount.
So just to be clear again, we already voted on the dollar amount. We already voted on that in the last workshop. What we're voting on now is we're going to warn that to the voters, and we're going to have a voting day, preferably the same day as Ferrisburg, and have another vote on this budget. And so we wanted to make sure we had enough discussion about this, enough hypothetical situations and conditional statements that, this is what we think will pass. Because, as Jeff said, if we have to go again after this to the voters, it is going to be very difficult. And it will be very, I think it will be disastrous to the school. That's my opinion.
So just, Kurt, if I can just add one thing. Just to be clear, one of the things that would be produced once this budget is warned is another one of these, which is the budget, okay? And so these recommendations are the final decisions there too, which are being presented, will be cast into here. So that still, I mean, in any given year, this is, this isn't a blueprint, this is a map. Fair? So.
Hi, Jade.
I'm just, sorry, obviously there's a lot of emotion around this. I guess I am a little bit concerned about the board sort of washing their hands of the decisions to cut specific people and throwing that all on Stephanie and Ed. Again, I know that's not your intent, but that certainly is how it sounds. We're just doing a dollar amount, and then it's up to them. And so the feelings of anger, or whatever the feelings are around losing positions, people, whatever those are, falls on them. And really what it is coming down to is the dollar amount that you're putting out there is forcing them to do that. So you have a role in that. And I don't know, there's a part of me that just feels like you can't just wash your hands of that.
But I think what we're trying to clear up, Jay, is that we don't make specific decisions about how the budget is implemented. That's a process that is played out because there's a contract involved, and that's what happens. The more people that know about that, the better, I think. I think that's the process we're trying to follow. So what we're discussing right now, though, hypothetically, is warning this so that we can vote, we can send it to the voters and have them tell us if this is the number.
I want to have a word, but let's let Tia go first.
Yeah. Tia and then Carol.
I'm not sure if this is exactly going to come out like I mean it to, but if I'm correct in understanding all of this, sometimes I'm not.
You do have AP calculus here,
Yeah.
Make sure your numbers are right.
If you are saying that you just are focusing on the numbers and you are letting more of the principals do the positions, then why did the board decide to take Walden off the table, whereas that is a position or necessarily a program and the board is supposedly focused on numbers? I guess I feel that that's a little bit contradiction.
May I answer that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a perfect opportunity to address what Jay said too. So, we're in a weird place here. We've never had to do this before at least in my tenure on this board. It's been, gotta be 10 years, a dozen years since we've had a budget fail in this district. Normally, we know when we build this thing before we warn it and put it out at town meeting, we know what's in there and everybody knows what's in there. This time, we're kind of in this place where we have to ask for guidance from our administrators and kind of accept it. Jay, I personally do not feel that I, as your representative, am washing my hands of any decisions. This is incredibly painful, and it sounds so fake for me to say it sitting in front of some of the folks in this room. But, so, as a board member, I accept the guidance that I get from the people whose job it is to manage this facility and manage the staff and make an educational program. So, when we get these lists, unfortunately, I'm hearing that as the recommendation, and I will support the administration in implementing that recommendation if I feel that it's going to get us where we need to get. And as I said earlier, unfortunately, and as Jeff kind of re-articulated, I feel that's where we need to get. Now, can we move some things around? We heard about the PBGRs. Can we tweak things? Is there some under-the-hood stuff that they can do? That is in their bailiwick. But
you know, yeah, if we decide, well, you know, let's chuck it and we'll do Walden or whatever, or we'll do 7 science teachers, I think the board might have something to say about that.
I forgot who was next. I thought I said Carol was next, but.
You did.
Do you want to go again, Carol?
Other people can.
Okay. Chris, Peter, and then Sheila, sorry.
I just want to follow up on Jay and Tia's remarks, and I'm not sure you're understanding. You are asserting that you are making no decisions, yet you have. And I would like you to own that and understand that and admit that you have made a decision, personnel-wise.
Did you
Do
hear
you
me
not
just, I just want to
understand?
be clear, did you
But
hear me
do-
just say that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that you all understand. That's all.
I think, who was next? Peter?
I have always found that this school board worked in sync with the school. Was able to rely on the decisions that the board made. And may not always have agreed with them, but our jobs were different. Your responsibility was different from mine, it's different from Ed's and Stephanie's right now, and different from the teachers. You were elected to do that. I have to respect that you clearly have thought through this process, and that you are aware of the pain that's going to, or in general, the pain that's going to occur when, let's hope this budget passes, and that people don't come out and vote the budget down because it's too low, because you never can tell why they're voting something down or in. You were told by the public that you needed to, you were criticized because you had not set aside money to manage the facility. And we kept cutting the budget to get to that point. So you put the money in, and then you were told, we're not gonna support that. So predicting what the voters are going to do is, it's clearly a crapshoot. But you have heard more sides than you hear in this particular audience, obviously. There will, if this budget is fortunate enough to be passed, there will be pain on this end that is going to be felt by kids. There are kids who will not succeed in the way that the system has been designed to help some of those kids. And that's unfortunate.
Sheila?
I may be repeating what Peter has just said, but one of the things I wonder if you've considered is that once the budget is presented to the voters that represents those cuts, if the possibility is that the budget will be voted down because of the fact that it has had some fairly dramatic and draconian cuts in it. And I think the unfortunate thing is that there won't be a way to know that if that's the case. And so what then is the outcome? If the budget is voted down for any reason, what's the next step? How do you know at that point to then lower the budget again rather than increasing?
We have to listen to the people that talk to us. You know, very wise man that's sitting in this room right now, says that most voters only tell you what they're thinking when they vote. And, you know, Rick said that to me about 5 years ago, when I kept saying, well, why don't people talk to me? You know, why don't they tell me what they want?
But the problem is if the budget is voted down, they're not necessarily telling you the reason why.
That's right. Understood. It's sometimes frustrating. Go ahead, Jeff.
In the budget that was voted on town meeting day, the details included a line item that said, that indicated negative $125,000 with no detail. Subsequent to the warning, the administration came back with a list that then detailed that $125,000. Do we have the opportunity to undertake a somewhat similar exercise? The faculty has asked for a voice. People have said there are better alternatives. If you knew what the budget amount were, is there the opportunity for a budget workshop? Not a formal board meeting. This is not an effective means to roll up your sleeves and come up with other solutions. Is that an opportunity? It's a question. I'm putting it out there.
Isn't that a direct question to these guys?
We have a precedent for that. That's how we dealt with the budget that went out at town meeting day.
So wait, Carol's next, unless you want to give.
Well, you know, I like Town Academy. So just for one moment, let's pretend we're Town Academy. You couldn't function like this. Parents would be coming in and saying, we're leaving. Taxpayers would be coming in. And so there's this collaboration that even has to happen within the public school. And it has always irritated me in the past when the music program has been used many times in the newspaper as a, you know, if you don't pass the budget, Vergennes will lose their music program. And so if you put the teachers out there, you know, it's like, I feel it's like shaming, and there's no one who is going to win and come out of it feeling like a community. So you have the bottom line that you're going to have the voters. And I really would ask you not to tell the voters you're gonna take out all these teachers, but that I hope. I mean, committees are lacking within this school that really accept open communication and you know, visionary conversations. And so why not? Why not put out the number and then make sure you form a community committee that's going to work out what the cuts are going to be like, with everything being able to be discussed. Because we can't leave unless we have the money. To me, that's the biggest social injustice of America. The people can't leave the public schools unless they have the money. But our best teachers can. They're free to go, and I don't want them to go.
Did I see your hand up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
A variety of times.
Yep.
Sharon, thank you. I've heard a lot about pain and the pain that is in this room from folks that will be directly affected by the cuts, but not much about the taxpayers' pain. And so I'll just tell you that there is some pain on the other side too. And that's the pain that we can't go out and get a 17% raise or a 15% raise or a 10% raise. We can't go out and get a new Social Security check that pays 17% more. We can't go out and accommodate the expenses that we now have, and they've all risen very rapidly. They're not expenses that any of you don't already know about and already share, but there are two sides to the issue. There's pain on the other side too. We, I think, as taxpayers, appreciate what the school board has done. They have now one of the most open processes, transparent processes that I've seen in a long time. I'm very proud to say that this board's acted completely openly and laid out the possibilities of cuts for everybody to hear without restriction. We all know what might happen. But as a lesson, Jeff is right, the board of directors of any corporation or any school board or any select board or any kind of company in America is just that, a policy-setting board. They set a policy, a direction, and a feel for the community with the community's support. The administrators work for the board. The administrators were asked by the board to come up with some possibilities of what the cuts might be, because the board is empathetic, has a feeling for the community, and has a great feeling for this school. So they're doing just what they were asked to do. I have to say that I'm very proud of having been a part of these meetings over the last couple of months, and very supportive of what the board is about to do. Thank you.
Jeff, in regard to your question, we have some timelines that are mandates through the contracts with teachers. So that is a hurdle to what you were suggesting.
Jay?
In the email that I sent to the board, I mentioned not only hoping that you would reduce the amount to what Lori proposed, but also to put together a committee, which Carol mentioned and some other people mentioned as well, because we're going to be in the same position next year. And instead of starting in December or January or whatever, trying to make this happen, it seems like it makes sense to start that process now. Which is again why I asked for less cuts now, so we had something to cut next year, because we know we're going to have to do it again with enrollments going down further, that tax percentage is going to keep going up, those sort of things. So I guess the main thing I'm saying is, how do we can we put a group together that includes some citizens, board members, an administrator, a teacher, to start looking at, you know, that budget a little more closely, so that it's not just the administrators that are, you know, that are coming up with how we're going to go about doing that. And it's not, and it doesn't feel rushed either.
Yeah. One of the things we added to the agenda tonight, Kay, was just that, a discussion. This is not the last item on the agenda, by the way. There are still some other items on the agenda. The next discussion item is to talk about adding a committee for finance and audit and a committee for the 21st Century Education Committee. So, which we talked about earlier, where probably the best use of that 21st Century Education Committee would be to put together a policy for the board for PLPs and PPGRs. So we are going to do that. So I just wanted to answer your question with that. We do have a motion on the floor, just so people know. It's been seconded, and it's to a motion to warn the articles that are in the warning in front of me. Is there any other discussion about that warning? Go ahead, Christina.
I swear this is the last thing I'm going to say. I just want to point out the fact that you guys have done a fine job of representing the taxpayers. You did what they asked. You reduced that number. And I would like you to go back to that middle ground, think about the students, because we've talked about taxpayers and the staff and the teachers and administration. I mean, the students are really, truly the people who are going to feel what you do tonight. Not just this next year, but down the road. Putting together committees, starting a planning process, that's going to be a great step forward, I think. But please consider just that 1% difference. It's not a big deal. And there are a lot of people that will help you sell that budget.
Thank you. Yes.
Kurt, I apologize for my lack of knowledge, but I'm asking for clarification because I haven't been at all of these meetings. Why is Walden not, or is Walden still a possibility if this, I understand the motion is to discuss this warning and moving it forward. if that budget is passed, is Walden still an item that can be looked at? If not, why? I'm just missing that piece.
In the past, we had a motion which did pass. The motion did pass, so that, to not consider Walden as part of this fiscal year budget. So there are ways that we can go back and amend that, but that we can rescind it, we can, do lots of stuff with it. Roberts is pretty good with ways to do things. But right now, there was a motion in it, and it passed, that it would not be part of this fiscal year consideration. So that's why. So there is something else about Roberts, I can't actually tell you what it is, but it, would get us closer to voting on the motion if you wanted to do that. Okay. So the motion has been made and seconded to warn the following articles, and the next motion would be the date, right? Okay. So the articles that we're warning is to give the voters the ability to approve the sum of $9,417,197 to defray current expenses for ensuing year, fiscal year 14-15, and pay outstanding orders and obligations. And at the same time, with Article 2, give the voters the opportunity to vote on and approve the sum of $40,000 to be added to the Capital Improvements Fund authorized by the Board of Directors on December 9th, 2013 for major repairs and/or improvements to its school building. Is there any more discussion? Not hearing any, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion passes. Yep. So next is a date.
The date is on here
Oh,
Yep.
for the vote.
Tuesday, May 13.
It's the same day that
Yep.
Harrisburg is.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to set the date for,
So moved.
and second? Second. Motion on the floor, set the date at May 13th at the usual polling places. And it is the same time as Ferrisburg. So, any discussion, any additional discussion? Not hearing any, please signify your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Public information.
Yep. So the next step in the process is getting the public information out there. So one of the ways that we do that is by having a public information meeting. And I would entertain a motion to set the public information meeting for Vergennes Union High School District Number 5. And do we have a date for the, not yet? Yeah, so the Thursday before May 13th is. May 8th. And they're usually held at 6 p.m. Here at the high school in this room. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Yep.
Second?
Yep. Discussion?
Yes, is that a board meeting?
No,
Public
it's
information meeting.
public information meeting.
There'd be no action, we would just be here to provide answers.
Could the board take action at that meeting? Could it be
No.
used for that purpose?
No, it would have to
What
be
action if there
warned.
was something warned, right?
Yeah, we'd have to warn an agenda.
We would have time to warn an agenda.
Yes.
The situation has changed since we had a motion in December with regard to the Walden program. The situation has changed. It's worthy of discussion. Can't do it tonight, I understand that.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to set the date and time and place for a public information meeting on May 8th at 6 o'clock at the high school. It's been seconded. Is there any more discussion?
I have a question.
Yep.
Sort of going along with what Sheila was articulating earlier, yes, there's a public information session. Does the board have the opportunity to do any sort of exit polling to determine if people voted against the budget? Why? As in too high, too low, otherwise you're really not quite sure which way to take your next step. So I don't know if you're allowed to do exit polling, if you're allowed to put documents out there, if you're allowed to have people out there. But this is such a lightning rod situation right now that if you don't get it right this time, you're gonna have to know what you have to do next. And you won't get that just from the results of a vote.
Lou, that's the kind of thing that I might want to take the opportunity to stick in the information that we put out there, and please have people get in touch with us and let us know.
Yeah, but you know what, that means they need to take action after they've left the polling station. Whereas if you're, I think of it as town meeting day where you've got the legislator who does his annual town survey.
And
You
it's
almost want to
anonymous.
have something there, or people. I don't have the answer, but I'm just trying to figure out how we collect the best information possible to help guide any decision-making that might have to take place post-vote.
I really hope this vote passes.
Hopes are fabulous.
Yeah.
But right now, you might have some of us who voted for the first budget who will vote against this budget because we feel like it's too much. So, I mean, that's what we need to find out.
So please be vocal about that when you do.
Yeah.
Be vocal about that. Like, that's not, be vocal about what?
So what I'd like to say, Lou, is that, you and I can talk about that personally if you'd like, but I don't know that the board as a entity is going to say, we're gonna do an exit poll. I don't think that would be, I don't even know if it's legal, so, yeah. I don't know.
I think there was a lot of legal issues around the Doyle poll in the first place, being at the polling station, and that finally, after a great deal of pressure from the community, did the town clerk actually allow for it to be placed there, because there's certain rules that wouldn't allow for such things that kind of normally take place. So I think that having us try to put something there and try to get into that quorum could be beyond what we would want to start.
So,
Why don't you and I connect after the meeting?
okay, Nancy, is this about the public information meeting? Okay.
I could ask if they'd be interested in doing that.
That'd be a good idea.
Excellent.
That sounds like a PBGR, like personalized learning plan sort of thing.
Okay.
Push poll.
Okay, before we go any further, though, I'd like to ask the board if there's any other discussion on the motion. There's a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded, to set the public information meeting on May 8th at 6 PM. Any other discussion?
Kurt, is that somewhere where, like, I come as the clerk and we need a moderator and all those things, like the annual meeting?
I don't believe so.
It's just an information meeting.
But I'm being very tentative because Mr. Busty's in the front row.
The parliamentarian.
No, I don't think it just, generally, we put together a presentation, and, the presentation we had for the first budget was what we put together for that document, and we discussed it, and tried to answer some questions about it, but the annual meeting is much more of a legal, there's law about the annual meeting, I know. I read it.
Didn't know if we had to have another one since we're
No.
voting on the new budget.
No, we don't. Not another annual meeting. Okay, so, is there any other discussion on the motion on the floor? Set the public information meeting? Hearing none, please signify your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And I think we have one more.
Let's just put this together.
You all set down there? Yeah, we'll sign that, but there are other things on the agenda, so. The next thing on the agenda is, was added at the beginning of this meeting, and in the discussion items, we chose to add that we would discuss the forming of committees for finance, and 21st Century Education Committee. Would you like to start?
I would like to.
Okay, great.
So I just came up with some ideas. There's not a lot of these, so you guys should share.
Need a pen?
I haven't put this away.
So this is just some ideas that I had, or, I'm sorry, Kathy. For things that the committees would be charged with. Stephanie said that there was, at her former school, that there was a finance committee that met before the board meeting and went through all the expenditures on a pretty detailed basis. I think that's a great idea. So that would be one of the things that the finance committee would be charged with. The second thing I thought of was that the committee would be charged with working with the business manager and the auditors to ensure that future audits are completed timely and they are clean, meaning no management letters, and present issues to and solutions to the board if these goals cannot be met. And the third thing would be to work with the board, the business manager and the special education staff to identify budget overages timely and develop an expertise in special education expenditures with the intent of identifying potential savings while continuing to maintain compliance with federal law. Established with the intent of advising the board and the public to produce more transparency in special ed costs without violating student privacy. And then bring to the board any issues that may require, focus, and then any additional financial related issues that the board sees fit to add. The 21st Century Education Committee, my idea was that this would be established so that the community, the teachers, the administrators, and the board could talk about what we're going to do about implementing personal learning plans, PBGRs, and still get a budget passed. It's really important work. Creating a community communication plan for recommending staff requirements, that would be part of this. Evaluate the PBGR systems and compliant in its compliance with the Act 77 and the personal learning plans. And then to monitor and report to the board the potential ramifications on our community of district consolidation legislation being explored and legislated in the Vermont House. I think that's really important. We ought to know. The state has been mandating all sorts of stuff to our communities, and we need some voice there. It would be a great idea to have a little forewarning if we could do that.
Okay, and in that vein, I'd also like to recommend that we start a facilities committee. So the experience that I've had at the Hannaford Career Center, there is a finance committee and a facilities committee. They are actually delegated financial responsibility. I'm not sure we're ready to do that, but it certainly is in the realm of possibility. It does allow us to get a lot more done rather than trying to do everything on a Monday night once a month. So I would recommend that third committee as well.
I'm feeling that the issues around special education have clumped in with the one committee. There could be, it seems to be a little much for one group in the sense that those could be separated out, or You know what I mean? Like, the same people wouldn't necessarily show up for all of that.
Yep.
And, you know, I'd be more than willing to work on a committee that dealt with costs around special education.
I kind of think you're right there. As soon as I read your words on the page, you know, this might be huge. And it's been on my mind to sort of ask you all to, as sort of a summer study thing, go back and look at what's going on with special education and come up with sort of alternative models. Maybe what we're doing is the best model, and that's fine if it is. But, you know, look at them empirically, look at pros and cons of different ways that we might permute the program.
I think
You
one
know.
of the real, and I think Kathy will go along with me on this, I think one of the real advantages is that Kara Griswold has that mindset and has that bent, and will be helping us realize some efficiencies pretty soon, I think. She's pretty detailed.
Right, and I wondered if that committee should be out of the AMWSU board rather than this board.
Well, it's true, it's not our bailiwick anymore.
That's a good point. But, you know, just not disabusing, removing that responsibility, that little thing, from, you know, the other roles of the finance committee, what you've articulated here is excellent. And I totally support it. And I can't be on it until I get out from a couple other things that I'm doing.
Okay, well, is there any questions or comments from the public?
Your second committee is very public, and that's good. I like public committees. Why not the first? Letting
It's certainly open to discussion. It
taxpayers.
was not my intention. The thing with finance is that it's not very glamorous. And not everybody gets it. And that's all my thinking was.
Well,
Absolutely, let's put community members on it. If you want teachers on it, I'm happy to be transparent. I think it's a great idea.
Well, any committee meeting is open.
It's an open.
It's
It's an
with
open meeting,
minutes and all of that.
It's
It's
also
they're
warned.
warned, yes, yeah.
So does everyone understand that? Part of the reason that we're making sure we talk about this ahead of time before we actually establish them is that a committee of a board is a delegated authority. The delegated authority has certain responsibilities and may even have, you know, certain authority. So, you know, we want to be judicious in what we create, because we don't want to just create committees to have them. We want them to be out there and do things and be effective. So I think right now, if we concentrate on these three, you know, without the special ed portion, that we'll have a good way. So what we need to do, though, I think, in order to move this forward, is to have some leaders of the finance committee. I already have a volunteer for that. You want to confirm that, Lori?
Confirmed.
Confirmed, okay. 21st Century Education Committee, do we have a leader for that?
I would, oh my gosh.
Bite your tongue, please.
Jeez, and curls.
You know, I mean, I think.
I'm very, very interested in the 21st Century Education Committee.
But bite your tongue.
But I
please.
also
Just-
think the finance committee is going to be very,
Yeah,
I probably will come to the meetings.
We
also have two more board members.
yeah.
We have two other people coming who will, you know, will work their way into understanding all the nuances of being on this board. And we have a new superintendent, with no disrespect to Tom. So we'd want to do that sort of forthrightly with that new person coming in. I'm not suggesting we delay until, you know, whenever she starts in June or July or whenever that is. But I think we take it a little slow until that person comes in.
Sure.
I don't know about you guys, but Neil is doing the most talking, so I think I might be putting his name down here.
You know, I think what we're gonna do is we're not gonna do that yet,
Okay,
but we'll do that later.
okay.
If that's the
So-
appropriate role for me when I get out from a couple other commitments that I'm doing for this board,
Okay.
then.
And the Facilities Committee, do we have anybody who would like to lead that?
I'll do that.
Can I, I don't know if it's possible to do this, but can we suggest that the special education part of this finance committee might be addressed on the agenda, maybe talked about at the supervisory union level?
That's a great idea.
I'd like that idea, because
You're sitting next to the chairman.
Yep,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a great idea.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I mean, and we already have a volunteer, I mean, that's another thing I'd be interested in, but,
That'd be good.
yeah.
Okay, so, do we need to take any other action on this, or I don't want to lag, but I also want to think about what we're going to do, because it would be my goal. And if you don't know, the public, we do have a Ferrisburg person, and he couldn't be here tonight, and we should have someone from Panton soon, so it would be my hope that they would also do committee work. So, does anyone feel like a motion is necessary, or?
Well, if we're gonna formalize the committee, we should move it, right? And
That's right.
You know, I mean,
We can
could
formalize it without
warn
charge.
We could warn it so that, you know, unless you have in mind to do work between now and next month, then why don't we warn it on our next agenda so that we can get a little more conversation with some other people that might be in the room. This is gonna be right before the vote, so it could be another pressurized meeting. Does that sound, yeah, and there'll be some decisions by then about the facility. Does that sound reasonable? I mean, not trying to delay, just,
No,
we'll warn it, we'll move it, we'll do it.
I'm glad to talk.
And as a wicked sidebar, Kathy and the building people did a really nice job with making some adjustments to the rebuild. So,
Well, we hope to hear
throw
about
some kudos in that direction.
So think about how you want these to be set up. Again, I have experience with the Hanford Career Center where the Finance Committee has authority up to $5,000. Then the superintendent has, another level, and anything above that, has to go to the board. So those kinds of tiers are certainly possible, if not necessary. I'm not suggesting they have to be there. Yep. Hi.
I just have a question. I work for a nonprofit, so we have a set of bylaws that sort of dictates what committees can do and can't do. It's all spelled out. Is that the case for the school board?
I've gotten halfway through the educational law book, and I haven't seen the word committee yet,
Okay.
but I'm working on it. But
I'm
I
just
also have
curious
asked,
in case there's stuff laid out.
yeah, also asked the VSBA about it, and they're actually going to be here tomorrow night, not here, but at the elementary school. We're going to do some strategic planning, and I'll ask him.
I don't think we have to put out any new notices of the fact that I don't think we should.
Yeah.
More authority to do X, Y, and whatever.
We always have Tim to tell us what we can.
Right, but true.
George is not here.
George is not here and Carrie is not going to.
All right, do we need to make any motions, or should we move on? Okay. There is a executive session to discuss a legal matter on the agenda, so I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Second.